Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the podcast.
Won't Shut Up and Skate, about Texas history, nostalgia, skateboarding, skaters, the scene, and all that good stuff. And by the broad opening eyes that you have as you look through this camera lens, we are joined here at the home of Mr. Jeff Newton.
Ta-da!
Hey, Jeff, thanks for sitting down with us today.
Man, we did it. We did it somehow. We don't know when this episode is coming out, so we are not numbering this episode. We've just, as a time capsule, just launched the Ken episode from the Banger and the Hanger.
Can we call this episode 69?
If you want. I think that if people know that we interviewed him around the 8th or 9th episode, they'd be pretty pissed if they had to wait 60 other fuckers before we get to this amazing
We're just going to
thing.
call it that.
No,
We're
make
gonna call it
make
that.
it 13. That's
13?
That's my lucky number.
Yep.
My birthday was 13.
Episode Poison 13.
Episode Poison 13. So as you can see, somehow Carrie and I, with all of this, the last few months have done it, and we are graciously being hosted by Mr. Jeff Newton today at his home here in downtown Dallas, Texas. You've lived here for how long?
25 years.
25 years. He's got a shop in the back and a home, and it's basically a treasure trove of nostalgia in this house. And we're going to go through some of that, and you're going to get a look into some of that, and we're going to dig, dare I say, deep. I haven't said it since episode 1 a bunch, Gary. I said it too much.
You did it enough in that episode
to cover a few. Okay, so we're going to dig
Yeah.
with Jeff Newton here. So we arrived yesterday, and it was a super cold, windy day. It was not balmy, because I realized that I don't know the perfect definition of that word. It was the opposite of balmy.
It was a little chilly. Yeah.
And we skated 4 places, Jeff. 4 that Carrie has never skated. He has a Google skate map that has every place that he's either skated or built or that's a spot in Texas. You can look it up. You can. And we skated 4 spots yesterday that he had not skated.
Well, they're brand new.
They're brand new. And they were...
It was a pump track and little mini street course in Gerald, Texas. It was a skate.
Where the hell is that?
Gerald, Texas.
where the tornado came through and tore up like 20 years ago.
It was in. It's north of Georgetown, between Georgetown and Temple,
Okay.
right on I-35. It's just a bunch of truck stops. But there's a new, like suburban master plan neighborhood, and the developer had to put in a certain amount of floodplain drainage areas to be like catch basins. And then he also had to build a certain amount of recreational facilities like tennis courts, swimming pool, playgrounds. And he realized if he put a skate park in one of the ditch areas, he could get sort of a twofer. So it freed up some extra land that he could build more houses on and make more money that way. So that's why there's a skate park there. And then...
Well, hold on. And it's beautiful. It's in a 4-way stop in a neighborhood. Across the way is the playground and a little soccer field. And then you've got a legit asphalt pump track that is hard, obviously, to ride with skateboards, with all of the center parts concrete instead of grass, so you can go all over the place. And then just up the hill is another street area / small pump track, all built by...
Bobby King with Dragoncrete.
Right, and that's Doug King's
son.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's cool. And what was the second place?
There's a little town called Nolanville, which is if you're in Temple and you want to head towards Killeen and Fort Hood, Nolanville's the first little town you come to before.
Never heard of it.
And you know where Temple is in
Yeah.
Killeen? It's right there, right off of I-35 as you're going towards Killeen. Little bitty town. Because you've got like Killeen, Copper's Cove, Harker Heights, and Nolanville, and then Belton and Temple are on the highway. But they've got this cool little skate path on. There's like a big main sidewalk near City Hall, and I can't say downtown because it's such a tiny town, but it's right along the railroad tracks, and it's sort of like the scenic drive as you're coming into town and going past City Hall, and it's like a 12-foot wide, really nice jogging path, and then every 50 or 100 feet or so on one side there'll be a quarter pipe, and then there'll be a bank, and then there'll be another skatable obstacle back and forth for like 2 blocks.
It's mostly street. It's got transition, but it's street. It's going to do a line.
But then the crazy thing is, 4 blocks away, the city is. They built that skate path last fall, as like a art in public places kind of project and a proof of concept that like, oh, a skate park could just be some things on the side of a sidewalk. But now they're building a legitimate full on skate park, only like 4 or 5 blocks away in the town. And that thing just got finished like 2 days ago. It's not open yet. They haven't done any of the landscaping, the grass, but all the concrete work and the parking lot and the sidewalk.
But you skated it.
Yeah, we went and rolled it yesterday.
Yeah, and we stepped over they had it all roped off and all that. It wasn't really fenced. I mean, it wasn't like we really trespassed, but we stepped over a do not trespass.
No. We stepped over a little rope that didn't have any sign that said "Do not cross this rope."
Oh, there was a part of the rope that didn't. The other parts did. So we kind of.
What are you talking about?
Anyway, pretty sure that Carjack got first roll on that, and so that was kind of nice.
I'm sure the builders skated.
Oh yeah, that's true.
The other day.
It was really well built for, like he said, a low amount of money. So listen up, municipalities. The first 2 places you should be listening to, and then we.
Well, that was also both of those things in Nolanville were built by this new skate park company out of Austin called Primary Concrete, and it's some guys who've worked with Spa skate parks before, who did all the parks up here in the DFW area. These guys are really good. The quality of those builds in Nolanville is just top notch.
It's buttery smooth and a lot of different cool lines, and they've really blended the obstacles pretty well. So
I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in the future, because that stuff.
What's number 3?
Number 3 was we went to the John Comer skate park in Garland.
The Boneyard.
The Boneyard.
Right. It was windy as fuck. It was windy and cold.
It was a little breezy.
Yeah, he was rocking the long sleeve rolled up, and I'm here like, I can't skate. I'm gonna fall and hurt like a wuss, but I get to roll around. But he was.
That part's fun.
It was good. It was fun. It was really. John Comer would be very, very stoked on that.
It's a lot of lines. You can go real fast in that park. It was a fun layout.
Yeah. So
number 4?
Well, no. Before we went to Devotion Skate Shop.
Oh, okay.
And hung out with him. And shout out to Devotion, one of our sponsors. We'll mention some of those people here in just a minute before we get really rolling.
Did you skate the park in Dallas?
There is no skate park in Dallas. Yes, we will talk about that. We will also talk about Mike Crow.
Dallas is the biggest city in North America.
I guess we'll talk about it
that
now.
Doesn't have a public skate park. Isn't that crazy?
It's nuts.
Huh.
It's crazy.
No, it's Dallas.
Yeah.
That's how we were.
Whereas every bedroom community has one. You know,
right.
Allen and Plano and Irving and McKinney and Frisco and Garland and keep going, Roanoke and Louisville and Fort Worth. They all have in Arlington.
Lots of parks in Dallas.
But no.
Dallas area. Excuse me, Dallas area. Yeah.
None in Dallas.
So then
That's wrong.
Like I mentioned, we went to Devotion, and then after that, we rolled up to Good Friends, and a plethora of Dallasites came out, orchestrated by Tracy Weller and his lady, and we had ADX show up, and we had Jimmy Coleman show up, and then we had a couple other dudes, Greg, and another dude that I forget his name from Midland, Phil, that was talking about skating Midland, and it was Tim Kirby, and the bartenders were all stoked.
It's a fun scene.
Gave some stickers and stuff, and they're going to be doing a pizzeria sometime in Dallas in the near future that's going to have a big John Comer memorial wall and stuff. So it was pretty cool seeing all those heads. Oh, Danny Hallenbeck was there. It was crazy.
For no reason.
Cool. There was no reason. He's in and out of Austin. We interviewed him. Danny Hallenbeck interview should be coming out soon. And then he shows up in Dallas, getting some personal stuff done, taken care of, and said hi and all that. So, and then so we waddled back to the hotel, and then the hotel had this weird group of young kids with a kid sitting in a car, and they kept rotating where a couple would sit in the car and the other ones would go upstairs, and then a little girl came downstairs, and then they rotated in and out, and that's fine, Danny, whatever, people are weird at the hotel in Dallas, etc. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:13 Pacific, we hear boom, 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 and people stomping and dancing, and they were in the room above us, and music started blaring. It was literally like a party, so I had to be not a Karen. What's a
Killjoy?
Well, the Karen is the women. What's
Buzz Killington?
No, there's a Ken. I was a Ken. I had to Ken it and call the front desk. And then John, about 4 more songs go through. And I'm like, okay, 4 songs. You're kidding me. Literally above us. And then John's like, I heard the knock. And then all of a sudden. So, but we're good. We're fresh. We're here at Jeff Newton's house. How are you, Jeff?
Ready to go.
Ready to go. So I have a bunch of photos. We haven't been lying to you guys. Rainy Bears was correct. May even be falling into the culprit vicinity because we leaked out that you were going to be receiving some photos from Thrasher. And
Right.
Rainey knew about this because he's got connections with Thrasher and because it's Rainy fucking Bears. And he mentioned it to us. And we've teased it a few times here on the episodes. And we are here and you're going to get a little view at some of those. And we've got some stuff. And so I thought it was cool. This picture of Jeff right here. When was this? Probably? You don't know years.
88, maybe.
88. And that's Jeff. And that is
I believe that's Fred Smith's wife.
Fred Smith. Who did he have a short stint on Zorlac?
Yeah.
He did. We'll talk about that. His wife, and if you see closely, she's grabbing the nutsacks of Mr. Jeff Newton, and he's not flinching. He's smiling. Anyway,
Good times.
Great times. Freaking amazing. And then this other one I'll show. I'm going to flip through and occasionally show some stuff. This would be, if not the first, this is a photocopy of the first ad of your first logo. Am I correct, or is this a second logo?
That's the first logo for the freestyle board.
The freestyle board. Now you have the Zorlac that's just the written out Zorlac that both Al have, and I don't think you have the second board. Do you know which one I'm referring to?
Yeah.
It's not this. It's just
It's
Zorlac.
hand drawn.
Okay.
Looks like crap.
So one of the things that we are super stoked and we always want to mention, and Carrie, I always mention it, but I'm just going to mention it here. Jeff Newton, thank you for letting us kind of bite off your name and do the won't shut up and skate that we've turned into our logo. I actually did contact him and Tim Kerr, the Big Boys for Our Music, and he's like, yeah, sure. It was pretty much like, okay, cool. But hopefully you knew immediately, you trusted who we were, and we were going to be dicks and bite your stuff, etc., without all the props and love. So we always give love and props to you for what you've done for Texas skateboarding history and why we're here, and the Big Boys for our intro and outro music. John Miller, our producer. It would not look this good without this guy who's not going to show his face in the camera. John Miller and the Wood Skateboard Podcast. Real quick, just because I got to do it, because we've got some sponsors and we've got some love, and then we're going to dig into some stuff. Just throw it through that we appreciate everybody that's joined us. We appreciate all the supporters. Hopefully you are sharing this episode and blowing us up at this point, whenever this comes out, episode 69. And
13.
13. Oh, we've gone to 13 instead of 69. That's a better number. Okay. Of course, we've got our won'tjumpandskate@gmail.com to send us stuff. We've got our Venmo if you want to throw us a few bones or help us out or help pay John because he puts in 1,000 hours for these amazing things. And so we're trying to kick back him. Eureka Street Creative. I got it right. Run through real quick. Thank you, Cat Palace, Cockfight Skateboards, Cherry's Wheels, Rainy and Break Free Skate Shop, Grackle, Loud as Thunder, Fast as Lightning, Old Bones Therapy, the Hanger Skate Shop, Devotion Skate Company we saw yesterday here in Dallas, and our pro sponsors for this episode, Embassy Skateboards, Roger Skateboards, Southside in Houston, Ohana in Galveston and Boog, and Curbside Skate Co. That's paying bills.
Hey.
Real quick. But hey, it's
Good rundown list.
Yeah, we're somewhat legitimate, Jeff, but yesterday we came over here and we got a little sneak peek and we got to go, wow, and check out his place. And he's been generous and kind enough to let us share these photos, not only the conversations, but stuff that we're going to show in photos and these amazing things. And whenever you put out your book, buy that book. So you're going some signing tours, I'm sure, right? Maybe?
I have no idea how it works.
No idea? Real quick before I'm thinking about it, just because it popped in my eye, Jeff's like, hey, I'm going to decorate a little bit. And he puts up a photo that he did not take, which we see here in the background. And that is a lot of people's favorite photo. And that's your favorite photo. Why is that particular photo your favorite photo?
Says everything.
Okay. Can you expound on that?
No, that's everything.
But as a photographer, is it the transition in light? It's the motion.
It's just perfect.
Right? The shadow. Yeah, it's great. So and that's Grant Britton's photo on the cover
of Todd Swank.
On the cover of Trans World, correct?
Yes.
That did not start till 1983.
Yeah, that photo is from 87 or 88.
87 or 88. But anyway, I thought I'd point that out before I forgot about it and that sort of thing. This guy, and we'll get to this here in a minute, was with Thrasher in 1981 when it started, which is not only the longest running existing magazine, it was also the
about
first
skateboarding?
Yes, about skateboarding.
There are magazines.
There are other magazines. Did you get your subscription to People this week, Carjack?
I'm not familiar with that publication.
Yeah, no, okay. So
National Geographic and nothing else. That's it.
So Jeff, one of the things that we've talked about is skateboarding from the early 70s and how it made its transition, and that the cities that were near coast that had a surfing influence kind of had a step up, let's call it, than some of the other cities. But counter saying that, Fort Worth, Texas, just around the corner, was one of the largest producers of skateboards in the world, responsible for somewhere in around 6+ million or more than that fans. In 1960, was it 7? I can't remember exactly. We talked about it earlier, but everybody got boards for Christmas, and then they sucked, and then that was the first death of skateboarding, and that was 1960. But you were around at that time. You're from Dallas, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us where that started. Was Nash an influence? Did that come from, or where did you get? Where'd you get it?
I had no idea about Nash.
Really?
That's Kmart and all that. So
Sure.
I got my first real board when the sealed bearings came out in 76 or whatever.
Okay.
That's when you started?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, in the neighborhood, we all had the little steel. Yeah. I don't count that.
Right.
That doesn't work for me. I started when the real skateboards came out.
Right, but let's talk about that. You said you don't count that, but there were kids in your neighborhood that had Nash toys rolling on the driveway and that kind of thing.
No.
You don't remember any of that. None of that. Okay.
No Nash.
No Nash.
We were better than that.
But I get it. That's fine. So we're like better than Nash. So you remember getting the boards, and where at that time was that was pre-Park in Dallas, correct?
Right. That the only place you could get boards was at the skateboard shop at the mall.
And what was it called? The Skateboard Shop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty clever.
In the 70s?
Yeah.
Okay.
This would have really also been really before malls were big, or was it like a strip center?
No, Valley View Mall.
Yeah,
it was down in where the food court was. It was below the food court.
So that was probably also in terms of malls. That was probably one of the early, like we had the Jimmy episode where he talked about he skated to the mall,
right.
And that was when they were advertising the malls, and that was kind of the beginning of it. So it was probably about the same time frame.
It was a big time mall.
It was a big time, yeah.
Also, Jimmy was from Corpus Christi.
I understand, yeah.
It takes culture a little while to get that far south. This was Dallas, Texas. I'm pretty sure Dallas, Texas had a mall in 1845.
1845.
It's Dallas.
That's true.
It's old money.
So at that time, were you at parks at that point?
There were no parks. Well, there was a park in Fort Worth.
Okay.
That was the first park in Texas. Well, other than Holly Hills, I think. And I went there once, don't remember the name of it, and it sucked.
Well, we know that there was Free Flight, and there was Wizard, and there was USA, and then there was another one that ADX was talking about that was poured horribly. That was Mid-Cities. So there was a fifth one, is what you're saying? Because we're not sure. There was 4. So was it one of those 4?
What?
Mid-Cities, the USA.
Park.
No, that's in Fort Worth.
So that was a 5th park that was in the area.
Yeah.
So, and we'll get to this later. So you've seen there were 4 parks in Dallas metro area, right? And there are none.
Well, in the metro, there's just none in Dallas.
Dallas, correct.
Because Wizard was like Garland area, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Free Flight was Carrollton. So there still was nothing in Dallas.
In Dallas, right. And until Bachman Lake, would that have been like the first legit park in Dallas?
Well, that wasn't really a park. It was just some place to skate.
Yeah, and it was like the next, when the parks were closing, that came around because you guys had to move to ramps because all the concrete was going away. And
that blue ramp went to a bunch of different locations. We were behind a roller rink for a while.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it moved around,
we're going to talk about that. That's one of the mentions that I have. But so, because I was kind of made some notes here. So, were you a manager at Free Flight? Did you work at Free Flight?
I worked there.
Okay.
I don't know if we had a manager or not.
It was checking in kids and IDs and making sure they had their helmets on. But that would have been 78, 79.
Closed in 79.
79. So you were involved in the skate industry already, kind of technically.
I was Craig Johnson's babysitter.
Oh, shit. Okay, so was Craig the first of the guys that you kind of associated with or knew? Compared to,
back then there were a bunch of guys. It's just
right. I mean, Guimon. I know there's a lot of people that we'll kind of mention, but was Craig? They would drop him off at the park, baby. It was a skate park babysitter.
Well, with Craig, it was.
Right.
I would get a bonus from his mom every Christmas.
We're gonna ask him.
I'm trying to picture little baby Craig Johnson. I can't picture it.
First off, he's still bigger than most of the other kids, and his hair's wonderful. But we're going to ask him because we're also doing some other interviews today while we're here at Jeff Newton Place. Thank you for letting us do this. I don't know if this is true. We're going to have to ask him. Maybe you remember. At some point, was Craig's nickname? Did they call him Poodle?
Yeah, his hair. This is hair.
Okay, so he drove a Scirocco, and they nicknamed him Poodle. Tell us about that. Was this that age, or that was a little older?
Yeah,
I guess that would have been a little older because he was driving at that point.
Well, he got a hardship license at 15.
Okay.
And I think his first car was a big old clunker Plymouth, like old school.
15, he had a driver's license. So was he the dude that was already buying people beer?
No, that was me.
Oh. Jeff Newton bought beer for underage skateboarders.
I never said that.
No, never said that. Tell us, so the nickname, because he had poofy little curly hair before he got to his later dreads and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
So I think it was either Kenny Payton or Brett Anderson that mentioned that to me. So I thought that was cool. So, okay, so Free Flight, at that point, had you been already thinking of doing something? Well, let me ask this. Had you already heard about Johnny and the other scenes? Were you already traveling around Texas at that point?
Yeah, a little off and on.
Okay, to check out the parks or go to the beaches? Because I see some surfboards in here.
It was mainly to go to the parks.
Okay. And yeah, okay, so that picture that you recently posted of the bent cement guys and the two young kids, that's Jeff Phillips and somebody else, correct?
No, it's Brian Abel and Tim Williamson.
Oh, Tim. Oh, okay. All right. Somebody else had tagged that. So
both skated for Hobie. And Brian Abel's about this tall in that picture.
Okay.
He's like 6'5" now.
Oh, shit. So, and I did see the Hobie shirt. And of course, the dudes that were at the park were rocking the super long, crazy mustaches and beards and all that. So was that shot have something to do with like a little Hobie demo trip?
They invited us out and it was a free trip. There's nothing to it, really.
Right. So was that in the same? Do you think that was in the same time of when you were manager? Or is that post after you were?
No, I was still working at
you were still working at Free Flight. Right. So you were working at Free Flight, and you were going to the different parks that you had heard about. Probably saw in the directory in the back of Skateboarder magazine, right?
Yeah.
At that time,
and word of mouth.
Word of mouth. But that's pre you going to Austin and places like that for ditches and all that stuff. That's still before all of that's happening, right? Because we're trying to keep a timeline. We're going to jump around a little bit. We're trying to like establish some stuff because I don't think you tell us. I couldn't find any interviews on you, and we of course have watched. That's as I dropped my phone. We watched the love letters, but you really don't have a lot in there. You mentioned some stuff in love letters, but there's no interviews of you.
Nope.
And no paper interviews. That's amazing. We are very, very lucky, Texas, to have Jeff.
I always like to keep in the background.
Okay.
It was all about Craig and Johnny, and you don't need me.
But you're a skater. There's a photo I have somewhere in here. I'll pull it up here if I can find it of you skating at that time. So I guess I'm trying to establish.
I skated a lot. It's just there's no photos of me because I'm the one that took the photos.
Right.
And you were also skating freestyle.
Freestyle and half pipe.
Were you competing in freestyle?
Yeah. Oh, we'll have to look at my trophies in a little bit in my bedroom.
Oh, have we not done that? I'll have to find. There it is. Okay, there's the picture I was looking for. So that's you on the clown ramp doing a 3-wheel edger. Correct?
On a big boy's deck.
On a big boy's deck. Beautiful photo. So he was definitely skating at that time. But yeah, so you were competing in freestyle. So how was your placing in freestyle? What was your record? What were you rocking?
Number one.
Oh, really?
There weren't a whole lot of freestylers back then.
Okay. Pre-Rodney.
He was probably skating at the time, but we didn't know about him.
Okay. So this is still, because this is a short window that we're talking about in the late 70s up to the 80s, where 81 you're working for Thrasher and all that. So I'm trying to just dig some information and kind of see. So at what point do you remember traveling around to these different parts, Bent Cement, maybe you went to Holly Hills, I don't know where you went around to. At what point did you be like, nobody's doing this in Texas, I could do this? Or where did the, not even Zorlac yet, just doing something skateboarding related?
No, it all started with Zorlac.
Okay.
I don't know who set me up, but I found a guy that I could get blanks from, and then made some, sold them, made some more, sold them. And,
what gave you the crazy idea that you wanted to make skateboards and try to own a skateboard company?
It was cheaper than buying them. It was all about me. I want a cheap board for me.
Yeah, if I buy them in bulk, I can sell the rest and make money.
Right.
Yeah.
But at that time, did you think, I could sell something that can help me do more? Did you think of it as a business? Or was it just like, I want my friends and I want to do my own thing? Or was this the beginning of you screen printing and all that venture that you're in?
No, I meant to do it all.
Right. Was anybody were you making boards for the shops at all or anything like that? Nothing yet?
No, just for me.
Okay, so I think it was Kenny Payton that sent me a message, but he said Boulder Boards, this whole Boulder Boards thing, they had something to do with Kryptonics and they were making Dogtown boards. And I guess you got a hold of them somehow. Boulder, obviously out of Boulder, Colorado, I presume.
Correct.
Do you remember any of that? How you got connected with those guys? Were those some of the four?
I have no recollection, but those were the first real boards that I made, like an actual production board.
Right.
And were you always doing multi-ply boards, or did you ever do solid?
Always ply.
Always ply. Okay. Because I knew that was right at that time when it was starting to switch over.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it must have been wild, like the progression in skateboard technology in like that 5-year period went from
it was crazy.
Flat wood planks, and then add a wedge for a tail, and then plywood comes along, add a real kick tail, and then when concave came along, that changed everything. And the board
bigger,
widths are
bigger,
changing.
up to 12-inch wide.
Yeah, the truck manufacturers are struggling to keep up with these wider boards. Did you ever have the setup with the 8 wheels with the double trucks? Like
we made just a flat board 8-wheeler.
Yeah,
but
was it Lonnie Toft? Was
no kicktail, but we could ride it.
That's wild.
It's crazy to ride it.
Okay, I don't remember who sent me this photo of this board.
Right.
Do you recognize that person or that board?
That's me.
That's you. Mm-hmm. Holy shit. Okay, so I'll have to put this up. Yeah. But this was referred to as, I think Al says he has one in his previous museum, and this was the other one.
I think those boards, I just sanded off some other board graphic and put mine on.
And it's got a...
That's how you do it.
And for Zorlac, Texas DIY, fuck you. It's got a hang loose hand on it behind the Zorlac, and then it has another Zorlac up top with some lightning bolts. So was that like... Were you trying a couple of different graphics?
Yeah.
With it? And then he's, of course, you've got a...
That's just hand-drawn.
Okay. You've got a Donnell distribution, tracker trucks, because it looks like that. I don't know if those are what those wheels are, Rector and all that, and Town and Country. So, and you're rocking a mustache and some cool glasses and a full helmet with ears. Pretty cool. We'll post that up. So that was the early boards for you at that time, right?
Yep.
So Zorlac was obviously pre-Thrasher.
Right.
Thrasher was in 81. I've looked up and I've seen 76 and I've seen 79. Do you recall what you would consider when Zorlac started?
I think I started the first ones in 76.
Okay,
so the first crude ones.
Okay. Let's see if we can get the story right, because in Jeff Grosso's love letters, he you tell the story of Al Coker, and it's Al Coker butt naked in the rat hole, which was a famous, I guess, or a legendary bowl up here in Dallas that they chipped all the coping away to be able to skate it.
It just broke off.
Okay, and he's naked, and you see a butt shot of him, and then that's when you talk about the whole Zorlac in a dream. And you asked him. Just tell that story for us real quick.
I just needed a name for the board company, and Al had a dream that he lived on the planet Zorlac. And I said, can I have that name?
Right.
One board later, it was mine.
Right, and he traded you a board for that.
Right.
To skate. And the Zorlac, was there any explanation more about the dream? Like what,
No.
like he was on Zorlac and what happened? No, nothing?
I never asked. I just liked the name and ran with it.
Well, and there's, to your credit, not only is it, obviously a huge known brand in skateboarding, but Zorlac, Z, like if you go to Z, there's not a whole lot of words that are Z related. There, fewer, maybe Q has the least amount of.
I'm going to say X.
X, okay, X. God damn, X. Used to be Twitter, whatever. Anyway.
That has the most words on it.
Right. So, okay. So one of the things about Jeff here, and he was gracious to show, he has an amazing collection of toys and memorabilia related around nostalgia stuff. A lot of space characters, Ultraman, Return from Mars.
A lot of Japanese anime and live action.
Right. Godzilla's and all that stuff, amongst a whole plethora of other things.
Lost in Space
behind him here. At the time, Zorlac...
Forbidden Planet.
That's Forbidden Planet?
Oh, okay.
Is it
that's
Robbie the
Lost in
Robot
Space.
in both? Was he same name in both?
No, Lost in Space was just called Robot, I think.
It was just called Robot? I thought that was
I
Robbie
think he
the
had a
Robot
real
as
name,
well.
but they just called him Robot.
Yeah, the one who always said Danger, Will Robinson.
Correct.
Okay.
So, in those
So that's Forbidden
days...
Planet. All right. My bad.
We could click on the TV, and I remember watching Ultraman. I was a big fan of Ultraman.
Me
The
too.
Japanese animation, of course, Godzilla. I've got Godzilla tattoo and all that stuff. But at the time that the Zorlac came out, had you already stepped your toe into that world, the collecting the movies, all that stuff?
No.
Was there? I guess I'm trying to see if there's a correlation between your vast collection of that type of stuff and Zorlac kind of fitting into that theme. No?
Two separate roads. The toy thing started in '84 when I went to Austin to visit Tim Kerr.
Oh.
And he took me to Forbidden Planet at the store.
Atomic City.
Atomic City.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday. Okay, Atomic City.
Atomic City. And I saw a Godzilla and an Ultraman vinyl toy. And when they make this stuff.
Right.
And that was the end of me.
For y'all,
I would go every weekend and buy toys.
Yeah, so y'all don't know, Atomic City in Austin, Texas was a store that I've never seen anything like that. They also had Doc Martens and concert t-shirts and stuff, but you walked to the store and it was literally shelves of curated for sale Japanese animation toys that you got directly from overseas and all that stuff. And plus he had all the pop culture stuff at that time. And it's nuts, from mini size to full size dolls and everything, action figures, etc. And I told you the story. He passed away a few years ago.
Right.
And Austin, we went to his estate sale. We had a few friends that went there super early. Shout out to Misty and Aaron, and got some of his Halloween collectible stuff, like his 40s, 20s, 30s, 40s Halloween stuff. And then he had all the other crazy collectibles. But
did you ever see him in his underpants?
Prince?
no way. Tom Prince or
he-
Brett Roper? No,
he
the
had
guy
a
from.
full suit of tattoos.
Oh, yeah, he was heavily tattooed.
The gentleman. What was his name? I'm sorry.
Prince.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, who owned Atomic City in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
And again, you had to go to Austin for a shop like that because I'd never seen anything like that. You came from Dallas because it seems like you'd have some kind of crazy shop off the side here in Dallas, but no.
No, he was almost like a John Waters kind of character. Like he would have fit in a John Waters movie because he was just this eccentric guy who looked really tame. But yeah, he completely covered, full body suit of tattoos.
His back.
Early in the day before anybody had tattoos.
Entire back was Godzilla.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really well done one too. But yeah, he just seemed like this sort of mild-mannered character with the weirdest story you've ever seen, and it was super fun to hang out
He
there.
was a fun guy.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move a little bit here, Mr. Jeff Newton. So no correlation. My theories are gone. No correlation between your love that came later in the Zorlac. That just sounded like a cool name, and you just kind of went from there. And then you got boards originally, and then I guess Boulder Boards was involved in that. They were making. At what point did you start? Did you ever source boards here in Texas?
No.
What was your second sourcing of decks?
I think the second was Watson.
Watson Laminates, who did Vision. Am I correct? Watson Laminates. They were one of the old original ones.
Yeah,
and they're still around.
Yeah, they're still around. I couldn't tell you who they were pressing Vision, but back in the day. It could have been.
Right.
Because I know Paul Schmidt worked for Vision before he started PS Sticks himself. That could have been at Watson, but I don't remember.
But out in California.
Right. And originally, he made the boards and screened them all.
Okay. And did we narrow down a year? Did I ask that? I did ask that. Did we narrow down a year when it started?
Started where?
Zorlac.
Well, I started just playing around in 76.
76. When did you have to get a full-on tax number and all that? We probably didn't.
That's probably, like 79.
79. Okay. So, and you're working as a manager at Free Flight. And had you already been to the Pipeline and the Blue Ramp there in Houston Parks?
Yeah.
And seen those guys? I knew Hubert and all the cats that were there in Houston.
Oh, yeah.
Knew Booger. You've known Booger for quite a long time.
Yep.
No, wait. At this point, say 79, when you're getting legit with Zorlac, had you been out to the West Coast and hit any of the parks out there or just gone visiting?
The first time I went there, I think, was in 81 for the Gold Cup at Pipeline.
Okay, so it was like the tail end of the skate park era when they're all starting to close.
Right.
Okay.
And 81, of course, that's Gibson years and that sort of thing. But I'm trying to establish I'm trying to kind of figure a little bit of a line. So were you at the contest, the Texas Champs that we've talked about so much in San Antonio, Texas, at Northeast Skate Slopes in March of 78 with 800 plus spectators, etc.?
I was one of them.
Did you compete in that?
No.
Did not. Had you ever skated it, so you just showed up
no,
for
I've
this?
skated it before.
Okay.
It was a fun park.
Were you taking photos at that point?
I took a couple.
Do you have that in your collection of photos that was pre-Thrasher, so do you have photos of that?
Yeah.
Okay, that
And the one I can't find is Steve Alba doing a rock and roll and his dick is hanging out of his pants.
Because of the short shorts?
Yeah.
Yeah. The grape smugglers.
Oh my God, you have to find that because that's just so. That's oh my God. Let's repeat that. It's Steve Alba doing a front side rock and roll.
Said rock and roll.
Just a regular rock and roll. Regular rock and roll, and he's cock and rolling. It's coming out. Oh, that's in the Super Mad Rats.
The follow up on that was at one of the Shut Up and Skates in Houston. I saw Salva sitting on a bench. I go, "Hey, Steve, I was out, blah, blah, blah." And he goes like this and pulled his. And I got a picture of that too.
You're a cock showing good dude. That's so funny because Salva's come up a couple of times, and he actually responded to me on a message where I tagged him in. Did you know Mark Wheelis at that time?
No, never
did not. Okay, we interviewed him, and he was a ripper. He was on the Pepsi team, and all that kind of stuff. But he tells a couple of stories, but one of the stories was about him. And Salva says it wasn't him, it may have been Olsen, but it was hitting on, and not physically hitting, but like flirting with Mark Wheelis' girlfriend, because she was one of the cute girls in Texas when they were in town. So we got a few things to talk to you about, Salva, including your Shorty Mad Rats. That's so funny. That's a good story. So, all right, so we bring this up all the time because
like Jeff Krause always said, in skateboarding tricks, it's important to tuck it.
But what I do have, and I can't find it, is I brought a Zorlac deck down there and had every one of the pros sign it. Oh, and I can't find it.
Wow.
I don't know where it is.
That's a lost artifact.
And I was bad about keeping stuff, but it sounds like you were trying to keep stuff from those days and all that. So, okay, so that contest, how much do you remember that contest? We've talked about it quite a bit. I don't know how many of the episodes you've listened to, but we talked about it quite a bit. How much do you remember of that?
No, really none of it.
Okay, let's direct it a little bit other way. Pepsi, Continental Airlines, amusement company, a few other companies flew out, paid for all the pros to come out to run the contest, run the events, and then they apparently also gave trick tips in between to help the Texas skaters. We have a feeling that even though the California guys were still probably ahead of the Texas guys, they realized that Texas had a lot of fucking talent. And there's a lot of rippers, and they were like, oh shit. And they were all in their 17, 18, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old or whatever. And there's kind of stories of them. There's a couple of storylines. One of them is during the events, some of them were kind of dicks. Mark talks about how some of the skaters were getting spit on by the pros, that sort of thing. And then there's some shenanigans afterwards. But do you remember during the events, do you remember shenanigans? We're not trying to call out anybody, but do you remember the interaction of the California pros versus the Texas skaters?
All I went to that contest was to watch the pro skate. I really didn't go for the contest. I just wanted to see all those guys skate.
So that's part of it.
You felt like you got your money's worth.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
But so I guess that's one thing we didn't touch on. We talked about this being a contest. So was the first day like just a demo?
It was just a free-for-all.
Just a free-for-all, skating and all that.
Yeah.
And had you already started shaking hands and meeting people at that point?
No.
Those guys? None of those guys you knew?
No.
At that point?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, so fast forward to when they had the big contest here at Donnell, or was that at the convention center?
That's a little bit later. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to forward to.
Oh, you haven't forward to that. Well, I wanted before we do forward to that, because that's true. I just want the other shenanigans at this event. We love to tell the story. Was there were the good guys that they wrote in the article were a pleasure to work with, and that was Stacy Peralta and Ray Bones Rodriguez and a few of the other cats. And then there were the people that caused a ruckus and threw some chairs out of a window at a hotel, got kicked out, and then ended up getting pissed off and kicked out of the contest, and may or may not have grabbed some stuff out of the pro shop and then said, fuck it, and then went to ammo. Blackheart, Salba, what were some of the other names?
Olson.
I
don't know who else was on that.
These are all names that were mentioned in the article. And we want to talk to these guys. They're all good guys, but do you remember any of that?
We just heard rumors about it.
Just heard rumors about it afterwards.
Yeah.
But they were fucking shit up.
Now, at that point, had you ever heard about or been to the ammo pipe?
We kind of knew of it, but no one had been there.
Right.
From Dallas, anyway.
Yeah, because 78 that year, that was when it ended up on the cover of Skateboarder magazine. And that was like the first time it got really covered. And then it didn't again until you did the Thrasher article.
Now, wait a second. Wasn't it covered in the skateboard where it was the Texas Tales? Am I not thinking that's the article?
Skateboarder magazine from like early 79 before it changed to Action Now.
Correct. Yeah. So that trip was that we're referring to. Those guys
that's
went up
what
there.
I think, yeah.
Right. Pre the second trip that we referred to that we'll talk about here in a little bit that you went with Johnny and all that. That was not the Johnny frontside.
No,
that was 85.
Trip. Oh, that was 85. I didn't know it was that late. Okay.
But you went up that first trip where you took Alva and Dwayne and those guys. So is that the first time you had been there?
That's the first time I went.
Okay. Did you guys have to plot out the whole way in, or did you guys just come in on a boat, or did you rappel down on ropes?
Climbed over the fence, or climbed through the fence. Mm-hmm. There's a big retaining wall and a fence. You just push the fence and kind of squeeze through.
But did you have to go down a rope down that big wall, or did you have to go all the way down and walk up the spillway, or how do you get into that?
I think there might have been a rope, but it wasn't that big of a jump.
Right.
When you go in, though, if you lose your balance, you're down. Yeah. You're down the chute.
So that would have been one of the few times because we talk about Garrison Parge and all those guys that were skating that, and then we have this where Salba and those guys went to ammo. They must have heard about it through those cats. There's a connection there. Do you remember the interaction of how you heard about? Hey, come up, bring those guys up to ammo, and who was there? Do you remember everybody who was there? Can you list off? And
no one told us to come up there. We went on our own.
How did you know how the secret was to get in, or did you have somebody that had been there previously?
Nope, we just
barged in.
Barged in.
Yep.
And who was on that trip that you can remember?
Alva, Dwayne Peters, Peter Gifford, Kiwi, Chris Cook, this guy named Carlos that weighed a lot. And when he went over the thing, he fell and boom, there was a thump when he hit the sets.
Oh, you're talking about the jump that you have to make.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Kenny Payton was there?
I don't recall. I think Brett was there.
Brett Anderson was there. Okay. So.
Anybody else from Dallas?
I don't think so.
Was Craig and Jeff and all those, they were still too young at that point. right?
Did Alva and Dwayne, did they fly out to there and you just met them in Amarillo, or did they come to Dallas and
No,
you guys
they
all
were.
drove
They
together?
came to Dallas for a contest.
Okay, and then y'all drove out there together?
Yeah.
Right on.
Okay, so
did a caravan.
Were they surprised how long of a drive it was from Dallas to Amarillo?
No.
Okay.
So breakpoint, before we get too far, was that the Donnell event where the ramp? Okay, so let's back up and we'll get back to that in a minute. Mark that to get back to, because I have a couple of questions about that particular trip and a story that I was told. So the contest at Donnell's was after Pipeline and the ramp had already been moved up.
Correct.
And this is the ramp that you bought.
Right.
Okay. So let's back up for a minute. Keep check that we get back to the point of the ammo, because that's one of the things I want to talk about is the blue ramp, the clown ramp, and all its renditions. So tells that they went in and took part of it, became the P ramp.
Right.
And then they went to the Midnight Lumber Yard and got some plywood and, 2x4s and all that stuff to build decks and all that stuff. The story that you tell the story, you thought somebody stole it, but now we're saying it was already purchased?
I think these might be two different things.
Oh.
Because Jeff bought the ramp from Pipeline that came up here and became the blue ramp, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. I think the P ramp were similar sections, but I don't think that was the same thing.
Because it was from that
The same
park
exact
in
time.
Houston that had the indoor fiberglass park. Am I correct? Is that two different? That's different than Pipeline. There was also an indoor fiberglass park.
No,
Yeah.
that was outdoor.
Yeah,
Oh, it
Pipeline
was outdoor. It was just outdoor.
Pipeline
Okay,
was
that
outdoor.
It was
indoor.
like still like a strip center and
So
a
was that-
big grass area.
So there's a question you brought up where you thought these guys heisted the ramp or took it, but it was actually already paid for. So we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know. We suck at investigating, I guess. I don't know. Okay. So, but the truth is that some of that ramp was the P ramp, and the other portions or ramps from that park became the blue ramp that came up.
Now that was just these fiberglass transition sections. You had to actually build the flat
No,
bottom.
it came with the flat too.
They came with the flat?
Yeah.
Right.
Did
The whole
you
thing.
add the vert?
No, we just kept it just two vert.
Because they
Just
have
two vert,
they
okay.
have the pictures of where it goes up to transition, and then it looks like they've got another board outside mounted that's holding up another foot.
A vert.
A vert section, that picture in Galveston, which is again later than what we're talking about.
That's part of the ramp.
That's part of the
It's
ramp.
like the bolt-on extension
Okay.
made of fiberglass.
All right, so let's back up to get the history correct, because that's what we're here for. The blue ramp, which was originally in Houston at Pipeline, which was primarily a fiberglass park, got rid of the ramp.
Pipeline was concrete.
Concrete, I'm sorry.
That was never finished.
Right. What was the name of the park this came from?
The other one,
This blue ramp. It did come from Pipeline,
Texas Pipeline.
Texas Pipeline, which was mostly concrete, but it had the ramp in fiberglass.
Right.
Right. Okay. And I'm sorry I'm mixing up, because there was also an indoor park or a park that also was all fiberglass.
That was the Town and Country Park.
That one. Okay. See.
They had a full pipe. They had the little.
That's the one with the full pipe. Okay.
Yeah.
So when we get our shit straight,
I think that might have been what Ken and them took, but I don't know.
we got to figure that out. Okay.
Doesn't matter.
But yeah, Pipeline was over off of Long Point, over like Frank Garner's neighborhood.
Okay.
And then Town and Country was right by Town and Country Mall off of I-10.
Houston had more than one fiberglass shitty ramps. Anyway, whatever. You purchased the ramp from Pipeline.
I think so. Yeah,
Okay. Do you remember the cost?
$1,000.
Wow. Okay. $1,000. And then that ramp.
Which this was like 81.
Something like
that.
Because we got $100 from Tracker, $100 from $100 from Indy,
Yep.
$100 from all the companies, and then
Who made the sales pitch calls to get the money?
I think it might have been Donnell.
Okay.
Because he knew all those people.
Okay. So Donnell at this point.
But also, I want to translate that for our younger listeners. This is $1,000 in like 1980 or 81. That's
be
like
fucking-
$50,000 in today's money. Okay, you don't know how hard it was to come up with $1,000 in 1980.
Okay. So you bought that ramp, but it went to Donnell Distribution because that was the only place to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, and back up real quick, because we'll defeat this with you. Mentioned this yesterday, and a lot of people have told me I've said too much about the skate teams, but I'll throw it and I'll leave it alone. At the time, my whole argument about that is that all the California teams had the matching uniforms and all
Right.
that, and they skated and when they came to Texas, Donnell was the only one that was doing that. Now, Skateboard City had a team and all that, but it's probably mostly T-shirts. They weren't like the Leaf Garrett uniform type of things. And I know a lot of the uniforms weren't necessarily the show uniforms, like the whole skateboard movie and all that. But my whole point was, at that point, we don't really see a lot of time. There was Team Zorlac and stuff, but there weren't like the competitions that had skate team points and accumulation like that. We kind of feel like it ended in Texas at that point. That's what my reference is. Brett Anderson's like, well, we just wore shirts with the name on it. And I get that. It's true. You're right. But I'd say the whole skate team uniform pulling up in the van, and it's the Logan Erskine team. That kind of, after San Antonio, there's very little of that in Texas kind of thing.
No,
so
we had a Veriflex run through at one point. A couple times people came through. Waldo Autry came through one time with some.
Those were demos, though. Really, it was like the team going out and traveling and doing the freeformer team, and that sort of thing.
But they were really low key. It wasn't a huge event.
So back to where we were at with the blue ramp and going to Donnell's. And at that time, Donnell was the hot Texas guy in the sense that, or supporter, let's call it, because he had Stuart Singer,
right?
Who had one of the very earliest Texas boards. There's Bobby Morrow's signature model. Stuart Singer had a model. I don't know if there's anything that we're missing as far as any Texas skaters that you know of that had models earlier than that.
No, nobody had one
earlier than that. And then you take this blue ramp to Donnell's, and set it up there pre-clown ramp, pre-all Bachman Lake, all that stuff.
Well, since he pretty much bought it, it goes on his property.
Oh, so he bought it, you didn't buy it.
Well, we all bought it.
Oh, well, that's right, because you got sponsored. So back to where Kerry was talking about. So that's the contest where Alva came in and a bunch of pros came in, and that was the contest that's right there in front of...
Right, and they judged the contest.
The Doys were there. Guimond, Brett Anderson was there. All those dudes were there from whoever traveled up in Texas. What do you remember about that event or that? Because this was the first time you really set that ramp up, correct?
Yeah. The event, I really don't recall much about it, but the party afterwards was kind of crazy.
Let's hear about that.
Let's hear about the party.
Is that a hotel or something?
No, somebody's house. Some wealthy kid.
Oh, I think we heard about this.
And this is the one where Dana Buck went through the wall.
Yeah.
Oh, well, go ahead and explain the party as best you
know
can.
how you climb up like a hallway backwards, like a crab?
Oh, okay.
He hit a soft spot and went through. And we found him under the bushes outside.
He fell through the house?
Just through one of the walls.
One of the walls, but an outside wall.
No, inside.
Oh,
inside hall. Yeah, but he split.
He split, yeah.
But parents weren't there, so
that's funny.
Nothing happened.
So this was some skateboarder elitist house or something. Somebody who had a lot of money that came through, and all the dudes from that event were at that contest. At that party.
I think so, yeah.
And so, you guys, did they compete in this event, or did they come out just to judge it?
Just to judge and skate and have fun.
And who convinced or paid them to come out and judge?
That's what I don't know.
Okay, probably would have been Donnell, right? And if it wasn't, it was sponsors at the time.
I thought that was Continental did that as well.
I think the whole point of their trip was they wanted to go to Amarillo.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that was back to where we caught up from that because then we'll get back to that ramp moving. They came up for that trip. There's that photo that's recently been posted that we'll try to post. That's everybody standing there. The boys are young. And everybody's there. And then at that point, that's when they went, and that's the trip that you went out to the ammo pipe.
Right.
Okay. So at that trip to the ammo pipe where you didn't have a tour guide, you just kind of heard, had anybody in the party been to the pipes yet? Did you know if that was at that party?
We heard of one guy somewhere from Amarillo where somebody had been there.
That probably is Garrison Park. Yeah. Park.
We just heard through the grapevine about it and said, let's go.
I talked to Kenny Payton, and he tells the story, and I mentioned it, but we'll go through and see if you remember it as well. And that is, you guys are going, you go to the pipe, and you do your skating and all that, and then they leave, and you went and camped at a park or an area close to where Lake Whitney, am I correct?
Lake Meredith.
Excuse me. And apparently, as you guys were getting to your camping site, you passed by a religious gathering, like a bunch of people with tents, hooling out and about religion and all that kind of stuff, and there was coolers and all kinds of stuff and whatever. Kenny says that when you guys went to camp, him and
Dwayne, right?
Dwayne Peters, yes, okay, it was him and Dwayne wanted water, and you guys didn't pack in enough water, and they snuck over to this religious retreat, grabbed some water, and then came back and got away with it or something.
Okay.
Kenny Payton's point is he has heard stories that group of people made their way to Waco.
Oh, that was the Branch Davidian group.
I never heard that.
So we're trying to tie a link between Jeff Newton and the Branch Davidians. No, not really, but Kenny said he can't guarantee it, but he tells that story, and it's pretty fabulous to think about that timeline is perfect, because you're talking about, was that 80, 81, 80-ish? I don't know when the whole Waco thing happened.
94.
94, so they had been there established for it. Anyway, I just thought that was a cool story, but that might be the case.
Well, there's another tie to the Branch Davidians.
Ooh.
I made T-shirts and went down there.
Went down where?
To Waco, on the side of the road, as close as you could get.
Okay.
Set up a T-shirt shop. And
While the standoff was happening?
I sold them to FBI. I sold them to Good Morning America.
What shirts did you make?
It was like a fake concert shirt.
But what do you mean a fake concert shirt? What was the...
Instead of Guns N' Roses, it was...
like ATF?
Anyway, it was something to play on words with the Branch Davidians. And it had a tour on the back, tour dates, and then canceled. It was the last one.
So you literally drove out when you heard that. You printed up some shirts, drove out when that first started, and were you there when everything...
Oh, no.
They had cleared everybody out, correct?
Yeah.
You were still like a mile away, weren't you? Or something?
It wasn't very close.
It wasn't very close. That's freaking bull.
And I think I would send Craig down there, too, on a weekend, and he'd just sell a shitload of shirts.
Johnny on the spot, Craig on the spot. That's another time. You mentioned something yesterday when we were over here, and let's talk about some of the photos and some of the shots. There's a shot of somebody skating the spillway that's not a shot. Well, there's a shot.
Oh, it's going downhill on the spillway. It's fake.
Okay.
Yeah, that iconic shot from Thrasher magazine of Dwayne dropping into the spillway at Ammo like he's going to bomb down the hill into the water.
I think it was Tony and
Dwayne, right? Yeah.
And if they actually rode down,
they would have died.
They would have died.
Yeah. So they just got the shot, jumped off the board.
Yeah, as soon as you take the shot, you get off
the board. It was the Ammo moon landing shot.
Yeah.
So
looks good.
So they literally set up, dropped in, and then like immediately ran out, like 5 feet, 10 feet.
No, they just stood on the board right there, and I took the picture. They didn't ride down at all.
Because it would be death. That thing is gnarly.
Yeah, but you'd think that they'd at least go a little ways, but then maybe they'd slide down the hill like on a mountaintop or something. But, like I said, Ammo moon landing shot. I don't know.
All right, so moving on from that, at what point did you start getting a team together for Zorlac and moving into the story that we all know?
Slowly but surely.
Who was the first guy you picked up?
Probably Jeff Phillips.
Okay.
There's that picture of him at Donnell. It's a Donnell ad, and he's riding a Zorlac board, and he's doing a frontside air, and that's probably the time frame. But that didn't.
And it's one of the OG boards that just says Zorlac on the bottom.
Correct.
Yeah. No pictures yet.
No.
But that was post or pre Johnny. That was before Johnny. Way before 81. So that's before 81
Johnny would
Spring
have been
Series.
with Castor still.
Oh, that's right, in the Spring Series. Okay. So Jeff was the first rider, and at that point he was what, 15, 16, 14, 15, 16?
Something like that.
Okay. And
he helped design the double cut, right? Is that true? I thought I'd heard that story that...
I thought I did. I can't remember. It's a long time ago.
Well, and I say helped, I'm not.
Yeah.
But I thought he had said, maybe what he said was when his board came out on Sims, he liked the double cut shape, so he wanted his Sims shape to have a similar, just slight cut in at the rails and widen out at the nose and tail. But I remember he said the double cut was kind of like that was the board that he rode when he was on Zorlac, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Jeff, about that time was it the time that you wanted Jeff to ride for Zorlac? Was about the time of the ramp contest we're talking about at Dunnell's.
It's all that same time period.
That same time period. And had you already established any relationship with any of the other guys, Craig or Alan Guimont, or because they were all, I don't know if they rode for Zorlac.
I would flow on boards, but I wasn't at a point I could give anything away.
Right.
I wasn't selling enough to give it all away.
Okay.
Right.
And then, I guess the biggest name at that time was Stuart Singer, right? In Dallas. He was the biggest name. He won all the contests and all that kind of stuff. Was there a crosstown rivalry with him, or were you friends? Are you friends with him?
There was always, we're friends, but, well, not now, but back then. But there was each park had their own crew,
Right.
Wizard had their own crew. And it's like, are we going to fight? Or, it was all just stupid. And the same thing with Dallas and Houston.
Sure. That started early. But they were really against it, because Booger talks about that in the early Galveston games where they had one side of the island and the other side of the island, and they were the two crews, and you couldn't go skate those ramps without permission. Right. Was it kind of the same thing in that, or people would try to compete?
I think that was everywhere at the time.
Sure.
And eventually it went away, and everyone became good friends.
Right. So
then it became Texas versus everybody.
That is correct. And so Jeff was your first guy that you were trying to flow boards and all of that kind of stuff. At what point? Because he rode for you, but I guess that was relatively short-lived because he got picked up by Sims. GNS, I'm sorry, shortly after that. Do you remember that happening? Do you remember Jeff going, oh man, I'm sorry, Jeff, sorry, or any of that
interaction? It wasn't a problem. I knew he was going to go somewhere.
Right. But of course, not a problem.
I couldn't take him there.
So, right.
Was that an impetus to start putting out boards for Craig and Johnny at that point? You're like, well, I just lost my main rider.
Well, that's when
Johnny wasn't there yet, quite.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
But I needed another rider, so I think the next one was Craig.
It was Craig.
Now,
was Dan on Zorlac at one point?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's one of the interviews.
It's just wild to me, I'm sorry, but that how many Texas skateboarders, even if you knew them as having a pro model with somebody else, they were on Zorlac. I mean, so many guys.
Pennington was on Zorlac
Pennington was
for
on
a short
Zorlac.
part of time, but
yeah. I mean, Comer was on Zorlac, right?
No.
Gringo.
Had you already gotten out of it? Well, you did a Gringo board for him,
but Crumb.
Crumb was on there. Was Gentry ever? Did you ever float Gentry?
So there was there was a story I've heard that is in reference that I think it was on the love letters that they had to talk you into getting Craig. Like originally you didn't want to sponsor Craig and you had to talk to him. They had to talk you into sponsoring Craig.
I don't remember that story at all.
And I think it was because, let's face it, his style, like Jeff never fell. I mean, he fell, obviously, but he was clean. Where Johnson, you never knew. He's like crazy man.
Like a monster.
Monster, exactly. But there's a story, I think it's in the love letters, that talks about where, well, we had to convince him to, do that sort of thing. So that's kind of, who else?
It could be true. I just don't remember.
Right. Was the first board you put out your freestyle board?
No.
I mean, the first model, because that was your model.
The first pro model was probably that one, yeah.
Okay.
What was the first board you put out? Just a standard issue?
Just like the basic one with the cutouts, the handrails.
And then the new Tom Dom.
The routed out handrail grabs?
The boulder board. You can just tell it's a boulder board by looking at it.
So back at this point, were you still competing in freestyle?
Yeah, some.
Were you amateur? How did you enter the events?
Just as amateur. There was no pro or anything.
Okay.
There weren't enough people to have divisions.
12 people total entered.
I know. And they were doing handstands and dog walks and all the other things. Rodney was still too young. Had you encountered him?
No, not yet. I think my last trophy was in '79.
Okay.
So that's probably when I quit.
And there's the thing that we'll mention about one of your covers when you go to Kona, and you probably would have seen Rodney when you went to Kona at that point when that happened. But
did you and Al Coker ever compete in the same contest?
I don't think he ever competed.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure.
I think our first trip to Florida was Sensation Basin. That's where we met Rodney.
Yep.
Okay. That's his home park.
Right.
Is that Gainesville?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was his home park, and then McGill was from Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
And Gelfand, both from Hollywood. It's wild how much Florida inadvertently impacted skateboarding, since Gelfand invented the ollie,
Right.
McGill invented the McTwist, and Rodney invented
Everything.
damn near everything.
To move things along a little bit, we talk about Donnell's and we talk about that scenario. And at that point, one of the things that I'll just mention a little bit is it felt like Donnell started to fall off the map as far as like information I can find on him. And I guess maybe he shut his distribution. How did this ramp get to Bachman Lake? Was that after you had already traveled with it with the spring series when it left Donnell's?
That's a good question.
Okay.
I think the landlord probably told him to take the ramp down for liability reasons.
Sure.
And,
Damn lawyers.
I think that's when we started traveling with it. We took it to Auditorium Shores in Austin, Galveston,
On the seawall.
and then
Now, was that touring or was that was the
Contest.
spring series?
Yeah, those were contests.
Well, I guess let's go ahead and dig into that, because the spring series is a series of contests that led to Shut Up and Skate. And the time frame was, Carrie, if I have this correct, the concrete parks were dying. You had a way to establish the blue ramp at Donnell's. Vertical skateboarding was increasing at that time. And also with the parks closing, you started to hear around the state and other places, but the state, that people were building backyard ramps.
Right.
Correct. And so at that time, you're all of a sudden, I don't know how it came to your mind. I guess I'll ask, but do you remember being like, oh, well, why don't we just take it and do a series? Was it that simple?
Yeah, it was something to do.
Who was influencing you? Who was helping? Who was like, hey, yeah, that's a great idea, Jeff, bring it out. And
A bunch of people helped because I couldn't lift all that stuff myself.
Sure.
I can't think of anybody in specific that was like my right-hand man. There was no, it was just,
but
who can help?
you orchestrated that from learning, from watching the other events that you had seen previously, like the ones we're talking about.
Right.
You previously saw that, there's something here. There's something going, and you had already been hearing, I'm guessing, around the state of different sects of crews that were ripping and building ramps and stuff, right? Pretty much. Had you already known Booger and those guys? Had you met those cats yet?
Yeah, just from traveling. So that's a good establishment of the timeline in that early 80s. And so if I remember correctly, you took the ramp from Donnell's, and the first one was in Galveston. I'm guessing, yeah.
Okay. You mentioned, and I brought this up yesterday, I can't remember now. You mentioned about something about where Donnell's influence that ended in Galveston. Because I was talking about influence of skaters in Texas, and Donnell's name came up, and it came up that, well, maybe he wasn't as such. That kind of ended in Galveston. So when you took the ramp to Galveston for these events, did that kind of like fade Donnell in the spot? And then you kind of were the person now starting to develop skateboarding.
Yeah, they just kind
Texas?
of faded away. They just, I don't know if disinterest or there wasn't enough money in this industry anymore. I really don't know why, but he just kind of faded away.
Did they support you?
No.
Was there a crosstown conflict? Can we talk about that?
He just faded away.
Okay. But Stewart was a top rider at that point in all the disciplines. So did he stop competing? Did he go to any of these events and compete?
I don't think he did.
Was he a vert skater also? He was an everything
He was
skater.
everything. Well, back then, everybody did everything.
Sure. You did all the disciplines and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's kind of interesting because in this establishment of Texas skateboarding history, these are key points of things that changed. And pre that, Donnell was the team, the guy, the people, whether he was just making money off of his distribution as opposed to supporting Texas, because I think I get the feeling that he was maybe more making money off of it than actually supporting and building the scene.
Right.
Was that a correct statement?
Yep.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with doing that.
No, nothing wrong with that at the time. But that's part of the time when all the people are like, we can pour concrete everywhere. We can make all this money. It's free. You build it and they pay. It was that kind of time frame. Right. And then that's when it changed. It went fucking DIY. It went They're closing. We'll take that. We'll make something. We'll go get some midnight lumber. We'll build decks. We'll make something. We'll take this around to show the people. Thank you. That's freaking... You're so calm about it, but that's amazing to Texas history because that sparked so much about what we're getting into and more that's happening was the fact that you didn't know, but you said, well, I'm going to take it and I'm going to go with it and run with it. And that's a big spark in Texas history.
It was just an accident. There was no planning on this.
Beautiful. Oh, sure. And it was, again, skate for fun. It was that whole, which maybe hadn't even been coined at that point.
So what made you pick the venues on that spring series? Like, why Galveston? Why Auditorium Shores?
I went through Boog. He set it up.
He had a spot.
Yeah.
And then in Austin, did
there
Tim
was,
help? Or
there was
you
some
just know
festival
people?
going on at the same time. And
At Auditorium Shores? Oh, it's
Right.
probably like Aquafest or
I can't remember. But
Marley Fest or one of those things that they did at Auditorium Shores.
I'm sure it was Tim or maybe Jerry from Easy Rollers. He probably
And was
had-
that the contest where the big boys played on the ramp at Auditorium Shores?
No, that was at Donnell.
That was at Donnell's.
Okay, that was at Donnell's.
Oh, so let's go back to that because that's a fun story because that also, again, is brought up in, I was trying to move it past that, but we'll get to the spring series because that's a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, so at that point, when you go to Donnell's, big boys were already a part of things. You were already friends with them.
Right.
Oh, okay. So let's timeline that. How did you meet them? Because you're talking about the late 70s and early 80s, pre the spring series, or right there, the big boys are there. But what was the year they traveled out to see the Sex Pistols?
78.
78, they went out to the Sex Pistols, came back, decided to start their own band. So 78, 79, 80, that time frame. Where did you connect with them pre-making a board?
Well, I met Tim Kerr at Free Flight Skate Park. He'd come up from Austin just to come skate.
Just come ride.
And I didn't know him really. I remembered him after the fact.
And then did you meet the band just from going to see them play here in Dallas?
It just
So at what point did you get the idea to do a skateboard for the band? Because I think that might have been the very first.
It was. We beat JFA by 2 weeks.
By 2 weeks? I was thinking it was by like a year. But
no. There was a conversation between Brian Brannon and Tim Kerr, and they hashed it out.
And then Agent Orange got one like the next year from Vision, and then you really ramp things up with Metallica. But
So
Big Boys, that was the first.
Other than
First
the
pro model.
well, they had the Monkeys boards. No, that stuff's crap.
Yeah, the Monkeys didn't skate.
Right.
So that's a great point because I didn't necessarily know the correlation. And this is what's cool, kids. It's tying in all this shit. It's not shit. It's wonderful stuff. So again, that time frame, the big boys got invited because you had already been coming to Austin. So Pflugerville was already in play at that time, going around skating ditches. They were creating a scene that was associated because they were skaters associated to music. So all of this is a movie, just that part. All of that correlating at the same time. And those dudes, obviously, they're cruisers. They're having fun, skating track. They weren't rippers and of any like major,
no.
But they skated, they had fun, and they were doing the band. So you met them. What was the contest at Donnell's was pre their board, obviously.
Yeah.
How did you get them to come to? You just invited them to come in. I'm assuming you invited the big boys to come to that contest.
My main contact was Tim. It always has been.
Right.
And I said, let's just do it. And Biscuit pretty much designed the whole thing.
Right. That's cool because that's the famous shots of them playing on the flat bottom. And then as you mentioned in the love letters, that's when Lucero got hurt. Was it not Lucero who got hurt?
That was at Bachman Lake.
Oh, that was at Bachman Lake on the flat bottom. So that's two different times.
Yeah.
So you had the big boys play on the flat bottom at Donnell's?
Right.
Okay. At halftime or after the skate contest happened.
Right.
The thing we're talking about was at Bachman Lake.
Yeah, it was probably a shut up and skate contest.
Yeah. And there's that famous picture that Grant took where
everybody's laid out.
They're all laid out like they're the victims.
Yeah.
So I was trying not to prevent skipping around, but obviously I skipped around.
It's easy to do.
Hey, man, time is a flat circle.
So back to kind of what you were alluding to. So at this time, the Big Boys was your first signature board.
Yep.
Okay.
And to make a point about this, because I think a lot of people are confused. Most people think that every board that Zorlac ever did, Pusshead did the graphics, and that's not true.
Correct.
Right.
The band did the graphics for that one, right?
Everything before that, like all the double cut and all this, that was all stuff I made up.
Right. And
Correct.
Yeah.
Pre-Pusshead. We haven't got to that. Yeah.
But I know people who think that the Big Boys graphic is a Pusshead graphic because it has a skeleton on it. I'm like, no, that was a collaboration with the band members.
Exactly.
Because like Biscuit did the little cutout of the skeleton, and I think Chris drew the heart, and Tim did all the lettering and the little.
And then when I got it, I cleaned it all up.
Right.
Of course.
It was a little messy when I got it.
Right. So.
But I love that it was a collaborative of effort on the band's part. So the board really kind of speaks to the three different personalities, because you can, knowing that, I'm like, that totally looks like something Randy would do. The heart totally looks like something Chris would draw, and I can totally recognize Tim's handwriting on the other stuff.
And the little Dogtown,
the little Dogtown guys,
peeking over the edge. That's Tim.
So like, it's the perfect board to describe the band, because that's their personalities in the art.
Right. But at the time, now, when we started this venture, one of the first things I did is you can go onto Thrasher and you can go back, and we got to January 81 when Thrasher started and going through. And this has skipped a little bit because I was still trying to creep before that, but was the release of their board tied in with the release of their album?
Oh, no.
No, it was not. It has no timing whatsoever.
You think everything was that organized?
No, but I remember seeing, and of course Thrasher, the ads in the magazine would have been established, the timeline would have been, but I remember seeing ads in the magazine and then also seeing the Big Boys advertisement, so I'm assuming there was some kind of correlation there because, hey, their album's coming out or whatever the case is. But so they played at Donnell's, and I'm assuming everybody went crazy. California people took Big Boy's music back and that sort of thing. Where was the decision process to have them a band, not a pro, as opposed to anything else? What was the decision to go that route and establish that board?
Let's have some fun.
Okay.
That's all.
It was just have fun. Fuck it, we're doing it. Fun.
Are you available? Yes, let's do it.
Okay. That was easy enough. Yeah. All right. And
that's kind of a good motto for life.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, they're always we know that their motto is go start your own band and all that kind of stuff, but it's kind of cool just to kind of to understand better that I did not know that was the first like signature model, I guess you would call it, something like that. Yeah. And that was also the beginning of the, for lack of a better term, the death graphics, the gnarly graphics. Am I correct? You had done nothing graphically at that point that was anything related to death or any of that kind of stuff.
Why's it got to be death?
None of them were death.
Well, not death, but I mean skeletons and that kind of thing is what I kind of meant. So, not death.
Chip, would it blow your mind if I told you there's a skeleton inside of you right now?
I've got one too.
Oh my God. So that contest, they came out, they played, and then again
they probably played that night somewhere too. I don't recall them.
Right.
And then we roundabout back, and then you go into the spring series, and that goes to Galveston, Palmer Auditorium, Auditorium Shores in Austin, and then was the last one in Dallas?
I think so.
And it stayed there?
I think so. I don't remember.
Okay.
It's been so long.
Because there's also two things.
Is that the point where the ramp goes to Bachman Lake and starts staying with
before Bachman,
Melvin?
it went behind a roller rink on Harry Hines Boulevard.
So nearby still.
Yeah, in the area.
Because it was with roller sports. And remember, Guimond was he a pro roller skater?
No.
But he skated both.
He was good.
He was good. No, he was very good. Yeah.
Well, I did it too.
Huh?
It's easy to roller skate on a ramp.
Did you just say I did too?
Tape.
I did too. Yeah, I could roller skate.
Do you have any photos of you?
Not this way, but this way.
Yeah, eagle, whatever they call that.
The Biff stance.
Really? Could you do inverts and stuff?
No,
Airs?
just air.
Oh.
But do you have any photos of you being on roller skates on the ramps?
I barely have any skateboarding.
Oh my God. That's so rad. Well, we always do say our 4 wheels came from their 8 wheels, meaning they're being roller skates. So
you cut off 1 foot and it's a skateboard.
So the Donnell's, then the events, because we think it went, and Booger would know, but we think it went Galveston, Austin, and then Dallas. And then at that point, you own the ramp. It went to a roller rink and stayed there for a while.
Until we got kicked out of there.
Okay. And then from that point, it went to Bachman Lake.
Melvin at Skate Time.
Skate Time. Bachman Lake.
And did Melvin have anything else already there?
No,
to ride?
he was just a roller skate rental.
There's just the roller to go around the lake on the
Right. They
path.
had a nice path. And then he started carrying skateboards.
Right.
And
Now we got a ramp to ride.
And then his skateboard sales went up. And
Yep.
Well, again, put it in perspective for those listening in. Bachman Lake is a big lake with a nice trail around it and all that. And it was set up like you go rent bikes and roller skates and that kind of stuff again until the skateboard came in. And then this craze of skateboarding was getting, was popular at that time. And so that's where you're saying it blew up.
And I don't know how he got away with it liability-wise, because the ramp was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right.
They never changed it up. It was always open. Someone could die out there.
Yep.
Because there's bars across the street and strip clubs.
Someone could easily die just being in that neighborhood at the wrong time.
Yeah, strip clubs and all that kind of stuff.
Now, that again was what we call the spring series. There was also something called the backyard series, but I think that was pre-spring series. Wasn't it the backyard series led to the spring series that led to Shut Up and Skate? Does that sound correct?
Backyard might have been first.
Because that included San Marcos and the frat ramp and some of the stuff that was going on before I got to San Marcos and some of the other, I think one of Booger's ramps, something like that.
Well, since there were no parks left, where do you go?
It was necessity.
It's a ramp.
Right.
Let's go there and have a contest.
So the blue ramp was 16 feet wide, is that right?
Yeah.
And then later you acquired...
I found
the clown
pieces at a closed park in Chicago.
And you had to drive up there to get them?
No, my godfather was moving his business to McKinney or Plano or somewhere, and they just brought it with them.
From Chicago?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Shout out to my godfather.
Who found it, because
and my godmother, they're both gone.
Finding stuff like that back then, I mean, there was obviously no internet, so you had to...
By the way, just hearing that you had a godfather in Chicago sounds vaguely ominous. Mommy ties,
Godfather Newton.
But that's pretty awesome.
I think the only way to find it was you look in old magazines, like here, the advertising for the park somewhere. And you call them up. Hey, are you open, closed?
Now, do you know that park that was in Chicago that closed, did it have the section set up as the highball game?
Pinball,
the pinball thing? So that was more like a track that you followed, right?
No, it was just you hit the sensors.
The sensors.
I don't know how you would win or score.
Right.
It's just stupid.
But was it just a half pipe, or was it? Okay, it was a half pipe. I thought it was maybe like a more elaborate thing. So did you take those sections and just widen out the existing blue ramp, or did that replace it?
No, I think we only put one section.
Right. So now it was 24 wide instead of 16. Okay. And obviously it got named the clown ramp because of the designs,
right?
The bright colors and everything.
And we covered up the holes and made them flush, and it's still a crappy ramp. The seams, where you hit those seams.
I know when Mike Crum reacquired it at some point. I don't know if it was Overground or if it was the early version of Four Down, but he rebuilt it. And he was all excited about it out of nostalgia, he said, until he took his first run. And he was like, oh, that's right. I hate this ramp.
Yeah.
He said when it had to come down because they needed to change out the layout, he said his only wish was that he could smash it with sledgehammers. He wanted the pleasure of doing that. And
because the fiberglass, because each edge has a rolled edge. And so that's why, because it's... that was... timeline with that ramp, the Pepsi ramp. Did you own one or more than one, or did you tell us about Pepsi ramp?
I bought the ramp out of Tulsa, the park up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I don't think it had Pepsi on it. This one was the 16-foot wide, 8-foot tall one, not the narrow one. The Pepsi ramp was really big.
Right.
And I just drove up to the park, bought it, and drove it home. And got pulled over. I got
clear plexi.
Yeah, I got a picture of me and the state troopers because I didn't have running lights on it.
Oh shoot! Okay, so
were they asking you like, what in the heck is this? Or it was just
He was just laughing.
No
about it,
lights.
but
Yeah.
he just said, "Go get it fixed." And I go, "I'm out of here."
Yep.
So interesting. You may or may not know that ramp lives.
Right.
Okay. So Corey Thornhill and I were up in Dallas at some point, and it may have been the time that we stayed here. We stayed at Jeff Newton's back, I don't know, many years ago. Might have been in this room.
20 years ago.
Yeah, the lights didn't turn off. I couldn't sleep all night.
There's a switch right there.
Well, it was back then. I don't remember. Something wasn't working. But anyway, Corey Thornhill and I talked to Greg from Innovation, and he had a ramp that he says he got from you,
Probably.
which was that ramp.
Yep.
That he got that was at a church parking lot where they did like a Sunday church skate event to try to get kids in for religion and skateboarding. And that had been sitting there. So we acquired it. And that ramp was brought back to Austin, refurbished by Doug King.
Right.
And then he put the metal on it that is state of Texas paint that's at his house at the King compound in Austin, Texas. That's that same exact ramp. We call it a Pepsi ramp, but
Right.
it was the ramp of the times, just like a Rampage ramp was a ramp of the times. It was an actual ramp, right?
Right.
Something like that.
Somewhere.
Oh, we got, watch out.
No, Pickles, go. Out.
Pickles.
Out. Go. Go lay down. Go on.
All right, so,
Okay. Back.
Leave that in.
Yeah.
oh, okay.
No, really.
All right. Back to it.
Okay, so back to it. We had to break real quick and let some puppies go to the bathroom. There's a picture of
Come on.
Jeff.
That's her spot.
There's a picture of Jeff. And there is a picture of a different Jeff. That is Jeff when he was riding Zorlac at Donnell Frontside Air. That is the picture that was in the ad for Donnell Distribution that we talked about earlier. All right, so we're going to move things along. We've been talking quite a lot while, again, here with Jeff Newton. We appreciate so much you sharing all this history openly with us. We were going in about the ramps, and now we got into Bachman Lake and that kind of stuff, but it's time to kind of move things along, and Johnny goes out and kills it in the Gold Cup Series, and he's riding for Castor and all that kind of stuff. And I've watched a bunch of Johnny interviews, and of course, he wanted to ride for a Texas company. So let's dig into. You had Jeff, and then he went to GNS, and then when did you start having talks and get Johnny and Todd and et cetera, et cetera?
I think we would travel back and forth to Dallas to Houston and just became more and more friends until the one point is, hey, you want to board? And we jumped on it.
Right. And he jumped on it because he was riding for Castor, but he wanted to do something Texas. He talks about, I want to do Texas brand, that sort of thing. So, and then you guys dually developed the shape.
Right.
And he talks about how he took part of the Castor board, the Anyway board, the cutouts, and flared the tail.
Well, the first board was the pig board.
It was the pig, yeah.
Oh, it was the pig. That's right. And that was the graphic that just has his name and was it a triangle or something?
It's similar to the Pusshead graphic. Well,
did you do that first graphic?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. And he said, just put a cow skull on it, right?
And when we got it to Pusshead, I said, do this design in your style. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing. It's like the cow head, the three demons.
Yep.
Okay. So we also talk about, and as far as timeline goes, was that in the timeline before or after you had gone to what eventually became the skate park of Houston, and that's the metal U-pipe that was a cut in half metal pipe.
Texas Twister.
Yeah, we would go. That's another park we would go to.
Was that part of the time frame where you were getting Johnny to go from one to the other? Because I remember you mention about, I think I remember you mentioning that, and it was so hot your skin would just stick.
Oh, it was on fire, so hot.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Dennis Epinet in the early days and his parents' pre-park, I guess. It was before the Texas Twister and all that, when they were at the fabrication. They moved it over to the skate park Houston, but all of that. Was that and that was in the time frame?
Isn't it the same location? Twister and skate park?
Yeah, same spot.
Same spot.
Yeah.
Why did they take the pipe down?
I don't know.
Well, I thought that, and we'll ask Dennis at some point, I thought there was a metal fabrication close by that was part of his father's business or something of that nature, and that's where that came from. Now, whether they brought it and moved it to the other location, the actual skate park at Houston location, I'm not sure if that's the case, but it was a U-pipe without flat bottom, and he welded on the coping on the top.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there's some photos of some people going out there, and so you would have been traveling out there. There's no contests or anything, but that was the time that Johnny, was it?
Yeah,
and,
I got tons of pictures of him there too.
And okay, so Johnny was the hot kid at that time. So was that no convincing? He wanted to skate Texas, and you're like, that kid is really good.
I never heard him say he wants to skate for a Texas team. It just happened that way, I guess.
Right. And again, Jeff had already, I guess at that point, did you know that you kind of lost Jeff?
Oh, yeah, Jeff was going to the big times.
Okay. And so Johnny was, other than you do the big boys board, does the double cut come before Johnny's board?
Yeah.
Okay. So then the double cut, you had the big boys board, the double cut, you had your Newton bomb, and then the next one was Johnny's.
Right.
Okay.
Well, before the big boys, there was just generic Zorlac boards.
Mm-hmm.
Just said Zorlac on them, and they were just
okay.
Nobody's model.
So this would have been 81, 82, etc. Correct?
Around then.
Okay. So as we know, Thrasher started in January of 1981, and you were involved from the get-go.
I had gone to the Gold Cup where I think that's where they premiered the Thrasher magazine, the first issue at that contest. And that's where I met Mofo and all those guys and said, can I contribute? And I had shots in the next issue.
Correct. So issue number 2.
Yes, you can contribute. We need content.
Yep.
And I guess that was part of it. And you even mentioned this in the love letters, is that that's Pickles. Pickles is causing a kerfuffle. If you guys didn't know, Jeff's dog, Pickles.
Gotcha.
John, you want to make sure? Yeah, okay. Where was I at? Okay. We were with.
Well, I got a question here. Okay, so you had done some of the generic Zorlac boards with just what we would call a team board now, with just the Zorlac name, no real graphics other than the logo, and then you did the graphics yourself for Johnny's first model. How did you meet Pusshead? How did that happen?
I'd seen his artwork and he had some ongoing column in Thrasher.
So it was through Thrasher and Mofo and those guys?
Yeah, I said, I want to get in contact with this guy.
And they were like, he's this weirdo in Boise, Idaho, right?
And, I think we talked a little bit, but it was mainly just through the mail.
Mm-hmm.
And that Gibson, that's just classic. The first Gibson graphic that he did.
Is that the first drawing he did for you?
Yeah.
And he did it off of the original graphic that you had made.
He just reinterpreted the first logo.
And then he did, like, the shrunken head would have come later, and Craig's early one would have come later, and then he just went from there.
Yeah.
So if you see some weird edits, thank you, Pickles. Pickles.
And at some point, I'm going to swat that fly.
Right?
So we were talking about Thrasher, and we were talking about the Johnny board and release and all that stuff, and you knew that getting the Thrasher was going to get the Texas name out, and you were the only game going in that time in Texas.
Right.
And you were also sponsoring people that you were friends with, and people that were around that you knew, and that sort of thing, etc. Not to mention, because Thrasher needed content, there was a lot of stuff going on in Texas, and you were able to provide that content for them.
Sometimes I invented the contest just so we could put it in the magazine.
Oh, well, that's okay.
But, one hand washes the other.
Okay, so you at some point kind of thought, if I do these contests, I'll have automatically content to put into the magazines that will fill up with that kind of stuff.
And I didn't get paid for anything. They traded ad space.
So you didn't have to pay for ads, which gave you board sales, but they didn't pay anything.
No, I didn't want any money. Having an ad was...
Well, in like the early days of Thrasher, everything was so seat of your pants. They were just trying to make the thing work.
Right. So once again, kids, Texas, we're doing it for fun. We're doing it DIY. We're doing it our way because we don't give a shit what everybody else is doing, and we're doing it on our pocket. We're not trying to make money. We don't care about that. We care about getting it out there and getting the scene noticed and all. And you knew that Texas had something that was very worthy of what was going on.
I think a lot of states had stuff going on, but no one pushed it.
Correct. And that's true, but there was definitely a tie-in, and you were already noticing, of course, we talked about the big boys, you already noticing the correlation of music. And
it all just
it was all coming together, and so it was a lifestyle already forming at that point. And you provide a lot of content. Talk about the Wild Riders of Boards.
I really don't. I don't have anything to say about that because was that Mofo?
I think we will, but it was.
Are you talking about the skate rock albums?
No. Was I saying it right? It was the cartoon that was in Thrasher that was based loosely on Texas skating or skaters. But that wasn't you.
No, that was Mofo.
But it was about all the Texas shenanigans and all that stuff that was going on.
He made up a lot of shit.
Yeah,
that's what writers do when you.
Right.
Like, have you been to a contest, you witnessed everything, and then you read about it? It's like, that never happened. That never happened. They just make shit up.
And there was no way to prove it. Well, that's awesome. And, those early Thrasher days with you providing content, and it's cool to know, because I didn't put that together, that you were creating these series not only to promote the sport and have fun, and because there was nothing going on, so you wanted stuff to go on, so you had content, but it was also fueling the graphics of which... of the ads and your board company coming up and
the whole, everybody wins.
The whole scene, everybody wins. See, he did this for you guys. That's why we talk about, and you're so very humble about it that, when people talk about you and talk about Texas history and that stuff, they should be referencing and tagging you and letting you, I think that's part of the respect from what you did. Are you fingerboarding on the thing there, Carjack? Okay, just checking.
Finger something.
But that you did so much for the scene at that time and all of the correlations of things that we're talking about. With the times going and you get Johnny on board and you're on Thrasher and things are happening and that sort of stuff, you don't get paid. One of the things that I noticed is that you led the way in some of also the changing of skateboard advertisements and some of the ads that were out there. Because if I remember correctly, you rarely duplicated ads.
No.
You almost always had something different and unique.
Well, back then, things were changing so quick. By the next issue, we had something new out. Or something new was happening, or had a new rider or something. Yeah,
but I think that, when we look at those, not only do I start seeing a little bit down the road, you start seeing Sure Grip and companies like those having graphics that look very Zorlac-esque, that look in that realm.
Right.
Just the pure influence, from that and how that changed. But the ads, freaking brilliant. You had a Halloween ad with... It's Dan wearing a mask. Yeah. Craig Johnson's on the steps lying on the ground.
And he's got a hatchet in his hand.
The hatchet in his hand. And then you had the Dear Santa, all I want for Christmas is a Zorlac.
That's Tim Kerr.
That Tim Kerr, okay. Yeah. But if you go back and you look at the Zorlac ads, and you said somebody sent you a culmination of all your ads.
Yeah, I've got a book of all of them.
A book of all of that, which is amazing. But you look at those, and they were so far ahead of what was going on at that time, because everything at that time was still kind of the 70s pop kind of look.
And we didn't know what we were doing. We just threw it together.
Right.
We didn't have a design team. We just, whatever we had, we did.
Total.
Simple as that. There was no, okay, for this next 12 months, what is our goal? No, it's like day to day. What's happening?
You have brand guidelines.
No.
I wanted to ask if you ever knew Craig Stesick back then, because I had it seemed to me like you had a similar effect where Craig was
I've met him.
He was kind of the driving influence behind a lot of Powell's early imagery and with Thrasher, a lot of their early stuff, but he wanted no limelight whatsoever. He wanted to stay in the background and just kind of do his weird little art. And I always felt like you had the same kind of thing going on from out here instead of out west.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet him back then?
Can't remember when I met him. Probably at a trade show.
Yeah.
And it was just like, hey,
interesting character.
It's like, hey, it wasn't like some big grand introduction.
It's just funny to see how you guys had kind of an outsized influence that you couldn't have possibly known at the time that was going to happen. Y'all were just doing your thing. And like you said, it was like there was no plan. We were just let's do this. Let's do this next.
Skate
let's
for
do
fun,
something different.
DIY, the whole theme of it.
Well, like the whole Zorlac thing, I knew something was going on when I met someone riding a board that I didn't sell it to.
Aha.
A stranger came up on a Zorlac. It's like, it's going somewhere.
Nice.
Yeah, you're starting to get the word out there. That's so instrumental for all those things. Now you fast start moving forward into the kind of into the 80s, into the you had the contest series, you had the free to Shut Up and Skates and all of that kind of stuff. So Jeff, going into and talking about moving into, you've got Johnny. Jeff is going up and skating for other teams, but he's there in Dallas helping the scene alive. You got Johnny, you get Craig. Todd came somewhere soon after that.
No, he was later on.
Todd was definitely later on. So, because one of the things I wanted to ask you had riders in Texas, Florida, and the UK, but am I missing other riders around the country that you
Murph,
Murph, true.
Mertz.
Rob Mertz. Now, where's
I have
Mertz
a letter
from?
somewhere from him back in the day. He signs it Robbie Mertz.
Where is Robbie Mertz from? I thought he was a Florida guy. Oh, Pennsylvania.
East Coast guy.
How did you get connected with the guys that weren't in Texas?
It's kids write letters. I've got a box of them somewhere.
The sponsor me letter.
Sponsor me.
You never replied to mine. But you
still
He
got
had met you.
Yeah, right, exactly.
No, they would send photos. Who's that one? Brian Ferrabagoli,
Okay.
Florida. Who else?
Scott Stanton.
Oh, yeah.
Scott Stanton.
Donnie Meyer.
Johnny Meyer. Yep.
Now, we talked about earlier, skip around 1981, you went out to Kona, and there's one of your covers on Thrasher is Cab. I think he's doing a boneless, if I remember correctly.
I don't remember.
But it's Cab on the front cover. The rest of it's blue, right?
Right.
You mentioned before covers. How many covers?
3.
3 covers. So
one is Monty at St. Pete.
I remember that one.
and then
Doing I think they called then a
the gay twist.
Gay twist.
Yeah, he was doing a gay twist.
which is now referred to as
Mute grab
The
Caballero or something.
LGBT twist.
Yeah.
yes. And then there's Johnny.
No,
No.
that's Thatcher.
Oh, that's
the
Thatcher
other
that
one
shot
was
that.
when we did that East Coast tour, and it's like 7 or 8 photos, like in New York, Georgia.
Dan and Craig are in those photos, right? Or 2 separate photos, am I right? I've seen that one.
Dan wasn't on that trip. I think there's 8 photos. One was McGill taken by somebody else, but the rest of them are mine.
Okay.
Nice.
And that was at Kona. Right? Or no, the Cab one was at
The Cab
Kona.
one was at Kona.
Yeah.
And then there was
Did you those trips out to Kona? Is that when you established some of the Florida guys?
Yeah.
Also, and kind of picked them up. Okay. So we'll fast forward a little bit and the skate park of Houston. So one of the things that we talk about is how instrumental the skate park of Houston was, and Carrie knows the timeline very well. Lance's ramp happened the year before. They came to Houston. He rebuilt his ramp. Those years were...
Well, Houston opened early 85, I want to say, when the Kahuna got built, and 85 Shut Up and Skate was the first contest there.
Correct. And the year before that is when Lance had the Mountain Manor thing, correct? Or so?
Yeah, Lance probably built his ramp in 83, and for sure it was going by 84.
And then came into Texas, they skated that ramp, and that's the reason he went back to California.
And made the transitions bigger.
Made the transition. Yeah. So we talk about that ramp, the Kahuna, and specifically Dennis Epinet, who built that ramp, and all the guys who wanted the bigger airs, as a very integral point that changed skateboarding. It changed skateboarding in the sense that it took ramp skating from here to here. In gnarliness, in difficulty, in height, in all those things.
Right.
Talk about that a little bit. Talk about the skate park of Houston, or what influenced what that did, because it was a metal ramp, et cetera.
Thank God for Dennis Epinet for doing what he did.
Yeah.
Because that was the Mecca place, and you knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. It wasn't like some temporary thing.
Right.
So we would go there as often as we could.
Right.
And
It was fun because he always was building something new.
Right.
So it never got stale. There was always something different every time. If you didn't go there for a couple months, you drive down from Dallas, like, he built another ramp.
Yeah, and he was brilliant in the sense of he knew, and this was before he dug out his parents' previous park in the bowl, he knew that if kids went there and it was just the kahuna, that
They leave.
he was going to limit,
yeah.
but then if you went there and you see mini ramp, little bigger ramp, and a couple of obstacles, he saw that people could work their way up to that point. And I don't think he even knew, maybe he did know that was what the case is. But how integral the kahuna ramp was, because you were there taking photos.
Oh, yeah.
You had riders and all of that. What do you have memories of that contest, that first event?
Not a whole lot. I'm trying to think who came up with the idea of having the contest there. I think Dennis and I it just came
Was
up.
that first one a Shut Up and Skate?
I think so.
Yeah, the one in 85, yeah. But they'd already done Shut Up and Skate in Dallas. Like, what was 83 was the first one,
Yes.
I think. And then 84 was on the clown ramp. And then the next year, like, oh, let's do it in Houston. And then it kind of went back and forth.
And I don't know if it's true or not, but at some of the contests, things got out of hand. Well, not out of hand, but having too much fun.
Correct, yes, sure.
The rumor I heard was Powell said they're not going to send their guys anymore because it's too rowdy. And so they sent themselves. The riders bought their own tickets.
That would have been the second time, because when they came the first time,
Yeah, it was the whole PAL team.
The
and
whole
then
PAL team.
in 86, like, McGill came out on his own. Tony wasn't there.
But that's cool that they would pay their own way rather than
Yes.
since the company.
Well, but
would know.
isn't there the thought process that
because it was a fun event and
Right.
it was a good ramp.
But Powell didn't want to go, maybe because they knew that the Texas riders weren't maybe going to win the contests, even though like McGill won,
They
etc.
always did well.
But they knew that they had to step up their game because the Texas guys, I mean, that was the height of Johnny and Craig
Right.
and all those guys at that time. That was the height of it. And they were coming out and they couldn't compete. I mean, you know, I told this before and keep referring to love letters, but Todd talks about a bunch of pros walking up to the top of the ramp and going, fuck no, I'm not doing it. And, you know, it made boys to men. It literally did that ramp. And so how integral that it was that, you know, you guys came up with a contest. The Shut Up and Skate. Where did the Shut Up and Skate come from? Do you remember how that came about?
Just the words.
Well, just
Yeah, that and the idea
The
for
words
the
was just
contest.
like, you know, just shut up and skate. You know, quit
Right.
talking about it.
the original Shut Up and Skate. Right.
Did you decide to do your own contest as like a counterpoint to all the stuff going on the West Coast?
No,
Or
we were independent. You know, we didn't time. Oh, they scheduled for this, scheduled for that. Fuck it, we just do it when we want.
it's just like, it's the fall, the weather's nice, it's not hot anymore, let's do a contest.
And whoever shows up, shows up.
Right. And again, it's the same thing that we've kind of talked about between is that Texas didn't give a shit. The industry loves California and they love where Hollywood is and they love all that. And Texas is a town you pass through. It's a rad place, the towns in Texas, but it's not where they want the industry. So we had to make the industry ourselves and make the contest and the events. But it also, were you still writing for Thrasher at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I think my last published stuff was in '90.
Was in 90. So you went through pretty much all the 80s. And then, of course,
Well, they still, you know, like in some of the newer books, I've got shots in there, like those anthology books. There's stuff of mine. But as far as covering anything up to 90.
up through 90, et cetera. And then you, later on, like you mentioned, Todd Prince comes in.
Yeah, well, I think he skated for the California Zorlac. He wasn't. He was amateur with us, but he got his pro board in California.
Really? So, because I thought that the Todd Prince penis-shaped board was with him on the throne was from that era, from
That's
you.
from California.
That was from California after you didn't longer.
So let's talk about that. At what point I don't know if you remember years or what, but how did that happen where you ended up selling the name or it changed ownership out to California?
She made it. That was in the days before personal computers.
Right.
I didn't know what I was doing with business. I had no clue. And money just not enough money coming in and
Right.
too much money going out, and tried to get someone to help.
Yeah.
And I've got the wrong people.
Well, I guess let's back up because that really digs into some of the tough questions or some of the curious. So, Zorlac had a heyday. Zorlac was a reason for a lot of companies to change their style, their marketing, their graphics, etc. And then, of course, Texas skaters were known as big and burly and gnarly and that sort of thing. And somewhere in between the mix, the "fuck you from Texas" attitude came in, which was the Chicago
contest in '87, I think.
right, that you touched on, but you made these shirts because
Frank Hawk hated Texas skateboarders.
and why do you
Tony Hawk's father.
Yes, Tony Hawk's father, who I knew and I worked with during NSA and that sort of thing.
And he ran the NSA.
And he
ran all
hated
the
Texas
contests.
skaters because Texas skaters were partiers and all the California guys would come in and rowdy and fuck shit up. Do it our way.
Yep.
Exactly.
So I tried to make sure anyone from Texas that was a skater, didn't matter what team you're on, you get one of those shirts to take to California.
Or Chicago.
Well,
California, was
well,
it
it was
Chicago?
mainly
Take it to the contest. Take it to the big NSA contest.
Great. Okay, so in that time frame with Zorlac, one of the things that I notice is your ads up,
Sorry.
more ads. Then your ads go from small, thin ads to half pages. Then you get to bigger, then you get to full pages and that sort of thing. And that was obviously still the height of Johnny was still killing at that time. Craig, everybody was on the team at that time was top notch in that realm, correct?
Right.
And then the Metallica thing, Metallica comes along. So you had already had a tie-in with the big boys in music. So talk a little bit about how the Metallica thing came into play.
Well, somehow Pusshead had a connection with Metallica. I can't remember exactly what it was. And through him, we approached Metallica. And eventually we signed a contract, no money up front, which is unheard of.
Right.
And they got
For their name rights.
right.
Okay.
So they got I don't remember how many dollars per board. And the original graphic, the pirate graphic, Zorlac paid for $200.
I drove that for $200.
Yep.
Oh my God.
But Metallica owns it.
Yeah.
Even though I
Metallica owns that logo.
although I paid for it.
Mhm.
So, but
That's an interesing point on something we'll
but
finish with here in a
today,
minute.
if you tried to do that today, no.
You never get close to it.
You'd never. You'd have to have a lot of money.
Right. Because
Yeah.
they're like Coca-Cola, where it's like, "Brick, done." You can't do that as soon as they know you're doing it.
Good luck getting Pusshead to draw something, a custom drawing for you for
That point, but I just
under
meant
$20,000.
I just meant more like if Metallica saw it, they'd be like, "Nope, done."
Yeah.
and you can't compete with that sort of thing. So,
But it was cool because at the time, James and Kirk actually rode skateboards. Like they were stoked to be involved with a real skateboard company, and they picked the gnarliest one. And
what year would that have been?
Well, Thrasher did an interview with Metallica in '86 in, I want to say like the August
In their
'86
strange notes.
issue. No,
Or,
a straight up interview.
Okay.
It's a multi-page interview.
Was this pre-Ride Lightning and all that, or right at that time frame?
This would have been right before Cliff died. It's the same summer that Cliff died. So it was Master of Puppets era.
That Chicago contest?
Yeah.
That's
when
day he died.
Yeah, I heard the thing where Johnny was told, like, on the deck of the
And
ramp.
that's the day we had the first sample of the Metallica board to show.
Just happened.
That day.
Yeah.
That brought to Chicago.
And then for the Shut Up and Skate in Houston, at that November, they made it the Cliff Burton Memorial.
Right.
I will
contest.
post up that because I have that tee, light blue, at my house.
Yeah.
That is skateboarding, punk rock, or skateboarding, sex, and rock and roll. What were the three things on there? It's a skateboard photo. It's Cliff Burton, and there's another photo in the middle. So,
but yeah, that was '86, and Thrasher did a big interview with Metallica where they their photo was like in a little corner of the cover.
Skateboard chicks and rock and roll.
yeah.
And they had like the photos of them like in the bathtub holding up the Zorlac boards.
No, that was an ad, full page ad.
Yeah, they did the ad, but they also like in that interview they had photos of them with their boards, and James was talking about how he had fallen earlier that year or the year before and broken his wrist, and so like the record company didn't want him to ride a skateboard.
No, they said no more.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is they were set to play SNL and they couldn't because of the wrist.
Wow.
Did they never play SNL?
No.
Wow.
But they were scheduled.
That's interesting. Did not know that.
That would have been wild.
So
that would have been a cool thing to see too.
Yeah.
You get Pushead to get that.
So it's my fault.
Jeff Newton's fault that Metallica never played on SNL. No.
Hey man, they can't blame you for the Load album. That's all on them.
So you had that. You got the Metallica thing. No contract, no money up front, but they got money per board, and they could sell the boards and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
the T-shirts, we could put the graphic, but we couldn't say Metallica. We didn't have.
But you could put Zorlac in just the graphic.
Yeah, but we had no license to just do
the name
a Metallica T-shirt.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay.
So at that time, you also noticed that the ads go from the different skate ads that you had. And you had a couple of Johnny that were full pages and et cetera. Maybe Craig, I'd have to go back. And then they go to the Metallica. Because you're obviously pushing that once that happens. You're pushing the Metallica board. Was that the biggest sales you'd ever seen?
Yeah. But that's right at the time when money was becoming a problem and it was just a mess.
When you say business-wise for Zorlac and the challenge, that was the challenge for you in the regard for that. Because was a lot of it because of the simple cash flow where demand and you got to get the product and you had to put all the money in to get the boards printed to meet the demand kind of a thing? Or can you talk a little bit about the challenge or the difficulty of that? Because this kind of leads to some things, tail end.
Just not knowing how to run a business was the problem.
Okay.
And just not enough money coming in, too much going out.
Correct. So, but the Zorlac board was selling like you could not keep up with demand, is what I understand. Metallica board.
Yeah, but I couldn't. Without money, you can't get them.
Right. And at no point were they offering like, "Hey, we can help front or anything," because again, business was on at that time or challenging.
Yeah,
no
one would do that.
Okay. And so, that time. I'd have to go back and look, but I notice there's full page ads in the December of, I want to say it's 87 or 88. I don't remember the year exactly. And then the next January, there's no Zorlac ads after that. I don't find any Zorlac ads in Thrasher magazine after you had a bunch of full page ads with the Metallica issue.
That's probably when the California guys got involved.
Okay.
And I'm sure they didn't know how to start off, but they ran ads after a while.
Okay. But prior to that, you were having, okay, let's talk about the challenges because you had writers, Craig and Johnny, that ended up going to Alva.
Right. And
the understanding, I suppose, is because of the challenges and so much investment in Metallica boards. No.
I treated everybody the same.
Okay. I saw something about it, and part of the thing that was mentioned is that everybody was touring everywhere, and you didn't have the ability to necessarily help Craig and Johnny tour in Europe and all that. Right. And that was part of their decision because they could go to Alva, and Alva was doing all these world tours and that. Do you remember? I mean, that's a tough thing to talk about, but it's the story of Zorlac.
Well, I couldn't afford to send them to Europe.
Right. Do you remember those conversations with those guys or how that kind of went? Or, I mean, because there's no hard feelings, correct?
No.
Not at all. There's no... Hey, do you remember those times? Do you remember having the challenging conversations of like, okay, well, I got to figure out what's going on this end and you need to go do what you want?
Just everything was... If they wanted to leave, that was fine. I understood. So
right.
So at that point, were you looking at like the next wave of riders? Is that when you brought in Donnie and the A. Brooks and Scott Stanton and all that? Or
they were right at the same time.
Right around the same time?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I remember when you were like, that was like the new crop of boards that was coming out.
Right.
It was like the second wave.
But that's all California.
That was all California?
Yeah.
That was my question was, did you find those guys and then...
Yeah, they've been skating amateur.
Right. And then when the California guys were running it at that point, they kind of handled the transition of them to pro and putting out their board
and ruining Zorlac.
Right.
So okay, let's talk about it because that's about the history. So did you sell the company outright to California? Can you tell us about the tail end of what happened? Because you were dealing with Metallica, you were having business challenges. Metallica's board was popular. They were at the height. And at some point there had to be are you okay with talking about that?
The plan was supposed to be they would take care of the debt.
Okay.
And I'd still be part of the company.
Okay.
And that never happened.
So they were going to...
They screwed everybody over on the debts and just moved along. And after a while, I just said, see ya.
Did they buy the company from you? Did they give you with promise of the other stuff? Or was it more of like taking care of it?
They just took over the name.
Okay. But you had to have signed something legally, I'm assuming, to turn that over to them of some sort, correct?
Something like that. I don't know exactly what I signed.
Can you talk about who it was or who they were affiliated with that came in and brought the brand and thought that bringing that to California was going to do it?
They were a distributor in San Diego, which I found out later it was an apartment.
Boy, that sounds interesting with something we're going to be talking about here. Okay.
Anyway, so I originally talked to NHS about taking it over, and a couple guys from there came out and just saw, no, Jeff, you're a mess.
Okay.
We don't want to mess with this. So this guy, Dave Brown, said he would do it. Found out he'd been counterfeiting Metallica boards the whole time.
Boy, there's some counterfeiting going out in California. We'll talk about that.
Anyway, so I didn't do my due diligence and got hooked up with people that I shouldn't have.
Okay. And at that time, you said that they were going to involve you, but you still had some influence.
Oh, I still had some, but
so you're saying that's
eventually just pushed me out.
And that's when Todd was associated with Zorlac, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Well,
and that's when
he'd been skating amateur, but then they turned him pro.
And that's the Todd board with the
and they turned Stanton pro. They turned Mertz pro.
Okay. The A Brooks, was that pre or post?
That's California.
That's California. See, I thought all of that was before Donnie Meyer and all that stuff. I thought that was
all those
before.
guys skated amateur in Texas.
Right, on Zorlac. Mm-hmm. And then they turned and and that's when you mentioned that Michael Sieben drew a board for you.
That was years later.
That's much years later when you were completely out of it.
That's when I was trying to restart Zorlac.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's wind that down. So, I know that's difficult because Zorlac was a huge thing and it's so iconic to Texas skateboarding, obviously now, and everybody worships. You have collectors groups and some things we'll maybe touch on here in a minute. But then you go out in California. They say you're going to be a part of it, but they didn't really give you like art direction or right.
It was still loosey goosey back then.
And there was no connection except for phone calls, so you couldn't like walk.
I would go out there from time to time.
Oh, would you? Okay, yeah. All right. So, but then at that time they started transitioning, and that's when all the street skating and stuff was coming in. So they were trying to change the brand a little bit. So when you say they ruined Zorlac, in your mind, why? What? I mean, it wasn't you in the vision, but
they screwed over Pusshead. I'll draw another graphic. We'll pay you for the new graphic. No, we'll pay you for the old graphic if we do a new graphic. There was always one behind, so he got tied up with them, and at one point he just said "fuck you" and walked.
Done. And then that was going into
so they ruined his relationship.
Okay,
he could have been there forever if they treated him right.
Right. And you could have been there forever if they treated you right, especially with what's going on now in skateboarding with nostalgia and collecting and all that kind of stuff. You could have still had an involvement in that. So. Challenging time for Zorlac, and it was kind of ending at that point, but you mentioned trying to bring it back. So talk about that, because you didn't have necessarily legal rights, or did you have legal rights at that time?
I've talked to a couple people. No, nobody's making Zorlac anymore. I was kind of wishy-washy. That's when I started Gringo.
Okay.
Just for fun.
Right.
And then at some point I go, I'm going to reuse all the Zorlac graphics, and instead of Zorlac, I'll put Gringo on it.
Mm-hmm.
And went, oh, that's a little more fun. And at one point, I just said, fuck it, I'm going to do Zorlac.
Okay.
And just started
because they weren't doing anything with it. They were
doing zero.
It had just been dormant for years.
The name was, they're just holding on to the name and the nostalgia of it at that time and whatever. Okay.
Anyway, so I started making all the reissues, and that did well. And then finally, stupid me applied for the trademark right after Dave Brown applied for the trademark.
Oh,
because I wasn't thinking, I don't have a business head.
Okay.
Back then. Anyway, so I kept producing the boards. We were in court for years, and he lied so much on the stand,
Oh boy.
on depositions,
Okay.
and he got it.
He got it. He got the name, and does he still own that name to this day?
As of today, yeah.
Okay.
And when he dies, it goes with him.
But he owns the name. He doesn't own the graphics. You own those, right? Didn't you buy those?
No, nobody really owns them, but probably Pusshead owns them.
I would guess he'd retain
Legally,
copyright.
but
Didn't you buy the original drawings that he did for this graphics?
yeah,
from
we
him?
paid for them, but I
Yeah.
don't know who really owns them.
Do you still have those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not the original drawings.
Okay, I thought you had those
No,
at one point.
when
But what you're saying is you didn't trademark or copyright them, which is the legal binding of that. I guess that comes.
Well,
into
my question
is
is, like, he owns the rights to the name Zorlac, but he doesn't necessarily own the graphics, so he can't just go make the boards, right?
No.
Yeah.
no.
Well, if he wanted to, he could, but he has no access to the graphics.
That's, yeah.
When he won that over you, did he have any conversation with you, like, "Hey, you got to stop doing that," or no? That was you just kind
I've
of
never spoken to him.
right. Okay, so
But
then
like,
you,
if he wanted to start up Zorlac as a company again, he could, but he'd have to come up with his own original ideas and artwork.
Right.
He can't just reprint the
Well,
old boards.
when the shakeup at Syndrome Industries, Mark Schmidt was a partner over there. When he left, he took all the Zorlac graphics with him.
Mm-hmm.
He stole them,
Right.
so nobody could use them.
so we think he owns those. What's his name?
Mark Schmidt.
Mark Schmidt. Mark Schmidt
Well,
has.
he
the
doesn't
graphics.
own them. He just
just took 'em.
them.
Yeah.
Right, but he has them
Somewhere.
We think that he has them,
And that's
Definitely.
he just didn't want Dave Brown to have them. That's why he took them.
okay.
And my point is, if somebody's got the legal right to the name, if he wanted to make that a company, he could do it if he had an original idea and wanted to make.
Problem is,
new company,
if you
but he doesn't.
if you trademark something within a few years, you have to produce something, or you lose
Right.
the trademark.
Right.
By law.
Use it or lose it. Right.
Right, and he hasn't.
Right.
And I could probably go to court again, but I just don't want to.
Yeah. I don't blame you on that. It's just,
It costs too much money to lose the first time.
yeah. And it's just a bummer that somebody's being obstinate and holding on to this
He's
thing
just
that he's
doing-
never going to
he's
do
doing
anything
it to be a
with.
dick.
Yeah. And he doesn't have the creativity to want to do something with it. I could almost understand it if he's like, "Oh, I'm just really passionate about this and I want to do," but he's
No.
not. He's just holding it just all.
Here's a mental picture of what he looks like for real. You remember the skipper in Gilligan's Island?
Yeah.
Yes.
Looks just like that.
Oh boy.
Maybe
No,
not as
no,
jolly.
Not the hat though.
Right.
But he would wear short shorts and. And at one point, Losi, LSD, Losi Skate Designs, hooked up with him.
I remember
And it's
this.
I don't know when it happened, but he got screwed around with all his royalties. So what did Losi do? Stole his Porsche.
Oh, I don't know that story. I guess he acquired it. Let's say.
Al Losey's an all-timer.
Yeah, but it's
And-
not like he went somewhere.
And Dave Brown's so stupid, he didn't have insurance on it.
Low C
Allegedly.
rule. Thank you, Low C.
Allegedly.
Thank you, Alan
I
Losi.
love that. Yeah,
Jeez.
shout out to Al Losey. You're a real one, man.
Geez. So, man, it's all of that, and then you went into Gringo, and that was Will Taylor and
A scrawny little long-haired kid named Rainey Barris.
Who else was in
And Rye.
and Rye?
Six
We-
toe.
Six toe. He's not six toe anymore.
No, I got a picture of it.
You got a picture of Rye six toe, but
were you
that
already
was operated
friends
on.
with Reagan and Andy, their parents?
Well, through the kids.
Through the kids? Okay.
Because they would send me letters
Yeah.
and all, and I said,
Do you have an original sponsor me letter from Rainey?
No.
Okay, you just saw his golden hair because at the time it was Rainey and Ben Rayburn were the two little kids in the early 2000s that were just killing it. And, put a bar to that. So Gringo was, I guess short-lived
Yeah, it was just for fun.
for fun and doing it again, skate for fun or not at all, go start your own band, etc. But, to hear all this and again, we very much appreciate you opening up the stories. It with all the things going on these days, it's unfortunate that kind of, for lack of a better term, killed it for you in skateboarding because you don't have interest to do skateboarding at this time, correct?
No.
No. And that kind of did it. And it was unfortunate because if tides were turned in a few different things, including skaters like Jeff Stewart being here. If they were here at these times and you had rights to things at these times, life would be a lot different right now. You know?
Well, I'm still selling new old stock. I've still got stuff laying around.
Right.
So I'm still involved in the Facebook pages and all that stuff. So I'm not divorced from skateboarding like I was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago, if you mentioned Zorlac, I just walk away.
Yeah.
Right. But now, especially again with the Thrasher's photos coming out, that's going to become in the forefront again, and you're going to be putting something together to share with everybody that
I hope so.
Those Texas times and those days and all that good stuff. Because the whole, the whole story of everything and how it's come about, and then Gringo, and then it just kind of has tapered off. Is I guess everybody wants to know, where is Jeff Newton? What's Jeff Newton doing? Where is he at? And what do you think about what's going on in skateboarding now? What do you think about? Do you pay attention?
Not really.
Okay.
I'll watch videos online or whatever, but I don't really get involved with anything. I don't go hanging out at the parks or anything.
No hanging out at the parks. I've seen you at a couple of events every once in a while, but that's something like Craig Johnson's Bull Jam and
well, that's walking distance from here.
That's walking distance. What do you think about what Mike Crum has done?
It's crazy. In a good way.
Like, you're proud of him.
Oh, yeah.
You said he skated for Zorlac for a while, right?
When he was a little kid.
Right. But proud of him, right? He was CEO of Dallas nonprofits this past year, and he just did a thing on Kelly Clarkson's show that you mentioned, or that we mentioned, that was on the internet, where they were...
You mentioned it. I didn't know about it until you told me.
They did a thing on the Kelly Clarkson show, and they were
cool.
given a $10,000 donation, and they're in a competition for like a, great neighbors, community neighbors and all that, and what he's doing. Never, from the days of everybody being just California hates us because we're punk and we're gnarly and hardcore and all that, to Crum doing something that is community based, unlike any other place that's doing it, and it's almost like a 180 on how much we've matured, how much Crum and what he's done. Yeah,
I never would have thought to put those two things together, skateboarding and
the community center thing. Yeah, and it's worked out really well. But it almost doesn't surprise me. I mean, Crum's such a stellar person, and comes from a good family. He's got a good head on his shoulders, but it's so cool to see how it's come together. And it's amazing to me that he turned that specific property into a place where you'd actually want to go, because otherwise there's no reason to be in that neighborhood at all.
No.
That used to be a real sketchy area.
Yeah.
It's less so, largely because of what he's done there, which is cool.
When you look back, Jeff, you're such a humble guy, but when you look back and reflect on your involvement in skateboarding and all that, do you even think about that? Do you think about, like, wow, I did some really cool things and made some things happen? You've got some pride in you for all that, I'm assuming.
No, I always say we did it. I never said I did anything.
There it is.
There it is. We.
I've never said I, ever.
Right. No, but I mean, obviously.
That's why it says, fuck you. We're from Texas.
Never thought of that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's a crew. It's a community.
It is that. Man, it's crazy. I guess we're winding down here. I don't know what else to go through. Jeff, there's probably a lot of things that we would dig into, but give us, we try to do this a little bit. So, you have a story or anything about John Comer? Anything you want to say about John? And he's one of the Dallas skaters that we've lost.
Yeah, miss him.
Yeah.
He was a good kid.
Did you approach or ever think about it? Or was that he passed your time for sponsoring and that kind of thing? He was past that time.
No, we made a board for him.
You did a board for him? Okay. That was the Gringo board. That's right. That's right. The Gringo. But he was post Zorlac and all that. No,
he had come back from Powell and was not, I think, barely skating for Powell when he moved back to Texas.
Right. Got a story about Wild Bill?
Which one?
Wild Bill Pro Design pads.
No. Just the rumors.
Instrumental for changing pads, direction, and all that. Scott Mosier.
That guy was talented. But
So talk about that, because the guys at Grackle, this have already have happened at this point, but they're going to have an event in early March that unfortunately we're not able to make it because of other prior commitments, but they're doing it as a Scott Mosier, and people don't really know about him, but they put him in the realm of the Jeffs, Johnnies, Craigs, and all that.
but could have been, but
Could have been.
cut short.
Right. But he was that good and talented
Yeah.
as far as on a skateboard, vertically skating and all that.
Yep.
Okay. This guy right here, Jeff Phillips. He's gone 30 years now. Talk about Jeff for a minute.
He was another good kid. That's all I can say, really. No, he was just crazy talented.
What do you think that he's so iconic, and there's so many of us that talk about him all the time. Bring him up. Kerry is one of those. What do you think? I mean, is it true that his influence and his personality was that huge for what he did for Texas skateboarding in general, but try not to be cheesy about the question.
He would be like the Tony Hawk of Texas, if you want to rank him like that. He was that good.
Well, he was the only one to beat, not the only one, but he beat Tony.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also,
on acid.
On acid.
Yeah.
On acid, that's true. He also
Allegedly. Here we go.
He also had the front and back covers more than, was he the only one? Christian also?
You mean on the same issue?
Same issue.
He did it. I don't know if anybody else did it. But, and then he opened the skate park, which was huge at the time, you know?
Right.
That was probably the first indoor skate park I ever saw. And it was the first one I ever saw with a wooden bowl and, you know, a lot of really...
It was ahead of its time.
Yeah, a lot of really progressive ideas in that. So that was cool. And then just the fact that he was so personable, you know, anybody I've ever talked to who ever got to meet him was like, oh yeah, it felt like we were friends, even though I was just some kid at his skate park.
Yeah, he didn't have a chip on his shoulder.
Not at all. Yeah,
he was just the same kid.
No, from the time I met him, he was, every time I saw him, he was always, you know, you'd go, oh my God, Jeff Phillips here. But he was always just cool with everybody and talked to everybody and all that. And he's obviously iconic. And the chance that he got to ride for you and you were around him a lot is, you know, it's just a beautiful thing. It's unfortunate that he's not here because, like, you know, it would just be nuts right now what's going on with him and how well he's probably would be still ripping and, you know, all the stuff that goes along with that, you know.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, I guess we're winding down here. We've gone here for 2.5, 3 hours. John's looking at us. This has been great. We appreciate it very much. You don't seem to care that you have a long, everlasting impression on skateboarding, but you do.
I ignored it for a long time, and at some point, I just turned around and looked behind me and like, well, yeah, there's something there. And
you know, do you feel the love from people? Do you feel the mentions, the comments? Do you feel that now? Because it seems like it's now more than ever that we've seen, because of all of us getting older, we're all nostalgic. We want to collect boards and do those things, and it comes up more and more often.
I would get really uncomfortable when people would come up, strangers would come up and
get recognized.
I had a guy, his wife is from Fort Worth, but I had a guy come in from Japan just to see me.
Wow.
Well, and his wife lived from Fort Worth, but he made a special trip here.
Yeah.
And brought me Ultraman toys.
Nice.
And just to say hello.
Just to say hello.
Yeah, it's got to be a little weird.
Yeah, because he didn't speak English at all.
Yeah.
But that's cool that he brought you toys, because that's, again, one of the things that that's exactly right. So that's very cool. Well, Jeff, we appreciate it. Everybody out there appreciates it. What you've done and how instrumental you've been for Texas skateboarding is amazing. And what you've done, you're so humble about it, and you didn't even plan on it. It's just, it kind of helped formulate.
I did it all for the money.
Over the money, honey. But you formulate it and the skate for fun and everything. So make sure. So I'm going to tail off one last thing to tail off as we go into the final part here, and we'll just touch on this, and that is there's a big to-do about people reprinting graphics. And one of the things that's happening is there are a lot of people printing tributes of your original graphics and calling them tributes and putting them out there and selling them and making money, and you don't get tagged and you don't see a penny from it.
I've never even seen those.
But they're out there, and
I've seen the spoof boards, which is I think it's funny.
Yeah,
They do a small run of.
But that's changing the graphics when you say a spoof board. We're talking about that. There's
straight up reprints.
Straight up reprints. It has the copyright. It has the year. Yeah. They may or may not say tribute on the top, but they're basically doing it because there's no stock out there in the market and people want a wall hanger. So they're floating these wall hangers to look like, hey, I got a Craig, but it's not. It's a reprint of a tribute.
So a $15 board is selling for $300.
Exactly.
Plus. And so just curious how because there's some things we're going to be talking about this, and maybe I've already heard before you heard this, I don't know, but just how you feel about it, because one of the things that since we've started this, part of it is give props. If it anything, the minimum they can do, tag you. Thanks. This, where we're referring to this shot or any of the stuff from photos to graphics, any of that, and it's very disappointing that people forget
by
and they
tagging
don't.
Anybody that's admitting they're stealing it.
Yeah, that's why they're not doing it.
I get that.
You're doing something
I understand
illegal
that.
and you're ripping off somebody else's original idea. You don't tag them in it.
Yeah. So as much
you
as
hope they don't notice.
As much as you can call us haters, and as much as you can say "F you guys," you kooks in Dallas, or whatever the case is, you're still stealing the intellectual property that was created by something. And if you're not giving the props and the respect back to it, then you're doing it an injustice, and then you're flooding the market with bullshit and etc. And for us, we care about the history. We care about where it came from. We care about Texas, and we care about the influence you made, and you deserve and respect that. And Jeff,
thanks.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it. And I think that everybody out there appreciates you and what you've done, and especially spending a few hours talking to us about all of this.
Not a problem.
It's really cool, and sharing. So when you see this, give him love, share it. Flood his Facebook with thank yous and love, and tag him, and make sure that we give him the justice, because it's important, right? I almost feel like I'm almost getting sentimental here. I don't know, but thank you, Jeff Newton. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I guess as we wind this down, thanks. Don't forget to email us, won'tjumpandskate@gmail.com. Don't forget to send us some Venmos. As always, Kerry Jackson in this special edition. What do you got for us?
Hey, Chip. How many skateboarders does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know, Kerry. How many skateboarders does it take to change a light bulb?
For today, we're going to say a minimum of 4. 1 to change the light bulb, 1 to film it, 1 to upload it online, and then 1 to hate on it and leave a negative comment on that post.
And that's you have it, folks. Thank you for joining us for the Won't Shut Up and Skate podcast. We don't know when this is going to go. It could be 13, could be 69. It doesn't matter. Thank you, Jeff Newton, for sharing all this history with us. I'm sure we'll be talking to you some more.
I'll be here.
Now go out and do something. Do a bird. Right, Kerry? An invert? Scratch a grind? Listen to the big boys.
Do a bird.
And have some fun.
Future's up to you.